Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'll convene this public hearing. Welcome everyone for coming. Thank you all for coming out. Our apologies for starting just a little bit late, but we didn't have enough time between meetings. We actually, our morning meeting started at 11, and as we've been going ever since. In fact, Councillor Sikora laments that he didn't even have time to go put on a tie, which is not like him. So thank you all for your patience. My name is Richard Stewart. I'm the Mayor of the City, and on behalf of all of Council, I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. We know you have a choice in your evening entertainment, and we appreciate that you've chosen to be with us. This is a public hearing into the bylaws that will be introduced to you in a moment by the City Clerk. Council for the City of Coquitlam has given first reading to these bylaws and has directed that we have a public hearing to hear public comment. First, on each item, staff from the Planning and Development Department will present a summary of the proposed bylaw, and then we'll open the floor to anyone in the room that has thoughts to share with us on the proposed bylaw. We have pre-registered speakers on each item. Those that are pre-registered will be given the first opportunity to speak, and then we'll go to the floor for anyone else that's in the room. We stress to you all that this is a public hearing. It's an opportunity for anyone who has a view on the proposed bylaws to make that view known to council members. We're here with an open mind to hear your input. We haven't no one has prejudged the outcome of this evening or these applications. But there are some rules that Council has asked me to enforce. This is not a question and answer period. It's not an opportunity to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw either with council members, with staff, or with anyone in the audience that disagrees with you. So we ask everyone to please restrict your comments to the proposed bylaw, to be as brief and concise as possible. We ask speakers to limit themselves to a 5-minute speaking time in order that everyone that wants to speak can speak. You can speak more than once. If you've got some more good stuff, you just get to the back of the line and you can speak again. I ask that each audience member be respectful of each other and allow that each speaker gets to make his or her point without interruption. That includes clapping, no booing, no jeering. You can laugh if you think it's funny. That wasn't one. As chair of this hearing, I reserve the right to conclude any presentation that doesn't relate to the bylaw, that becomes abusive or becomes repetitive of something that speaker has already made known to council members. Please note, if you have something written that you want to have be part of the permanent record for the meeting, you have to hand it off to this table before we adjourn that item. That's at the end of the group of speakers. I will ask for 3 times, and then I will adjourn the item. After that, council can receive no further information on that item until after it has concluded, either been rejected or given fourth reading. Immediately following the adjournment of the public hearing tonight, a regular council meeting will convene in order that council can give consideration to a number of items on the public council meeting agenda, but also to the items on the public hearing agenda. If, however, during the public hearing, any council member wants more information or we want to have staff review some element, we may choose to not vote on one or more of the items in tonight's public council meeting. I'll now call upon Mr. Gilbert to introduce the bylaws on tonight's agenda and the Planning and Development staff to make a presentation on the first item.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item is 606 Chapman Avenue in Bylaw 4418. The intent of this bylaw is to rezone the subject property outlined on the map from RS1 one-family residential, RS3 one-family residential. If approved, the application would facilitate a subdivision comprising 6 one-family residential lots.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the benefit of our 2 new council members, I'm Erica Tiffany, Supervisor of Development Planning. This site is located on the south side of Chapman Avenue. The site currently has a single-family residential dwelling. The site and surrounding area is designated one-family residential in the city's official community plan. Zoning on the site and to the east, north, and south is RS1, one-family residential. Zoning to the west is RS3, one-family residential, and there is one site to the north and one site to the south that is zoned RT1, two-family residential. The applicant is requesting to rezone the site to RS1, one-family residential to facilitate a subdivision of the existing 1 lot into 6 lots. At the September 9 council meeting, council directed staff to conduct a public consultation process to obtain input on the proposed frontage improvements on the eastern edge of the site. Transportation planning staff conducted a public information meeting on November 7, and based on the feedback that was received at that meeting, they have since revised their request for a vehicle lane on the north-south-eastern frontage, also known as Pin Oak Pathway. Nickel Avenue, however, will still be extended as part of the subdivision on the site's southern edge frontage. The remaining portion of Nickel Avenue would be subject to extension through future subdivision applications by respective property owners. And also the Pin Oak Pathway, which has a revised recommendation for asphalt pathway paving at 3.5 meters. We're also proposing that there be a landscaping along that western edge to provide sort of a nature trail aspect to that pathway. It is designated as an urban greenway on the Coquitlam neighborhood plan, and by urban greenway it is meant that it's an enhanced bicycle pedestrian pathway. The reason we are proposing the 3.5 meters is also to provide for improved accessibility for people with mobility challenges along this pathway. So with respect to the rezoning application, staff are recommending all final readings to the rezoning bylaw number 4418, 2013. Thank you.
I've got a question from Councillor Sikora.
Yes, the Nicola Street is got a lane there that goes part ways.
Can't hear you.
And I wonder if that lane is going to be opened up further.
I wonder if you could pull your microphone towards you.
Can't hear you guys.
The lane.
Thank you, sir.
You can't hear you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, the lane that is just Nicola Avenue has got a lane. And is that lane going to be extended, or is it blocked off at a certain area and it will stay blocked off?
Okay, before we get the answer to that, the microphones aren't working the way they normally do, and I'm not sure why, but did everyone hear that question the second time? Pretty much? Okay. So we're just going to have to ask everyone to pull their microphones a little bit closer when they speak, and I'll turn mine off.
Thank you. In answer to Councillor Sikora's question, the southern edge of the site, the subject site, will be approved to road standard as part of the subdivision requirements. So road will be extended just along the frontage that is consists of 606 Chapman. So it's about an 80-meter road extension on the southern edge.
So what you're saying, that the lane is going to stay the way it is? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, she said that was the opposite. Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, I don't know if Councillor Sikora's been out on site, but if you go to the end of Nicola Avenue, you go down that new street, it dead ends right now. It actually dead ends 1 lot east of the subject property. So the plan would be, if council supports the rezoning and the subdivision goes ahead, the applicant would extend Nicola Avenue down along the full back side of the property. So Nicola Avenue would carry on down to create that new frontage. So there'd be frontage out on Chapman, which there now. Nicola would be at the back.
Okay, thank you.
Your Worship,
And it will not, sorry, it won't connect at this time because there's some intervening properties there before it would tie into Nicola at the west end.
A request for attachment 5 to be on the screen, please. That's Schedule A. Attachment.
No, next one.
Okay, we'll probably put it on the... We know he's looking for it.
Yeah,
Okay,
bring it in
zoom
a
in
bit.
there, please. Yep. Just push it hard, push it hard.
Bring it in a bit more.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Good, that's good. There you go.
Okay.
So, Your Worship, as mentioned, you see where the orange sort of streak along the south side there, that would be the extension of Nicola along the south flank of the property. There's still some intervening properties to the west before you get around to Boyle Court. So Nicola Avenue would extend further to the west, but not connecting through to Boyle Court with this application, if supported by Council.
Well, it will still come to a dead end only because the properties to the west of this property aren't, we can't cut across them yet. Okay, Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a couple of things because I've got a lot of information on this. Some of it's old, it's been revised. I've had a number of emails. I've had some discussions with staff, and there's a couple of things around the trail that I just want to maybe clarify for myself and for a lot of the people that are sort of listening. On the trail right now, is it on city right-of-way? Is it designated, or is it actually just one of these things that's evolved over 50 years on private property? Is it actually on an easement right now?
Ms. Tiffany.
Thank you. Yes, it's on city property, the 3-meter wide pathway that exists.
So it's currently 3 meters right now, and this proposal would take it to 3.5 meters.
The proposal would take it to 3.5 meters paved within a 6-meter right-of-way.
3-meter paved with 1.5 meters, or 3.5 paved with approximately 1.5 meters on each side. So that would take us to a total from 3 meters or 3.5 meters to 6.5?
To 6 in total.
To 6 in total.
Which is a continuation of the 6 meters to the south of Nicola, between Thompson and Nicola. That's an existing 6-meter.
Okay. And the bollards that are proposed, the traffic pins that are proposed at, I gather, at each end, are they proposed to be permanent or removable? So they are back to being removable. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Seeing none others? Got a speakers list here, and I'll begin with Margaret Dr. Rom, at 641 Claremont. Margaret. Go to Rom. We have copies of a good amount of materials here. I suspect that a lot of you have written to us, or rather, I know that a lot of you have written to us. We have copies of your materials.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We of Oakdale have a number of footpaths. We look at these paths as an important part of our community. I ask you to take your mind off any changes of these paths. There is before you a request to subdivide a piece of land on Chapman Avenue. There are a number of ways to subdivide. Strata with common property, bare land strata, or 6, 5, or 4 fee simple lots. Considered as subdividable land independent from the footpath. That is, if the path did not exist, how would you subdivide this land? Would you go to your neighbor and take away a portion of his lot in order to subdivide another person's lot? Well, the path belongs to everyone in the community. All the footpaths belong to all of us in Oakdale. Taking this footpath from all of us and to replace it with a vehicular byway is a violation of the community in the same way that taking away a neighbor's land is a violation of that neighbor. We have yet to see alternate proposals for subdividing this land. We do not oppose subdividing this property. At the same time, we do not want to be managed or talked down or pushed aside. We have seen and understood the 1970s Advanced Street Plan. We reject the notion that you can't change this proposal. We need to know how you are going to change this proposal. We are not confused. Return to the drawing board. We strenuously object to any interference with our walkways. Hands off our walkways. Thank you.
I'm going to make this clear right at the beginning. This isn't us. We didn't design any of this. This is the city staff have put forward some recommendations to council. They're before us now. So we want to hear everyone's opinion on this, and I suspect we're going to hear a lot of opinion on this one. We've heard actually some that have a different opinion from yours, so let's hear everybody tonight. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, just a question to the last speaker. She referred to the proposal for a vehicular byway, and maybe this is a question actually for staff, because the original proposal for a country lane certainly could be described as a vehicular byway. The new proposal that was announced tonight was for a paved pathway. Would that be described as a vehicular byway, and could vehicles actually use that, even if the bollards were taken out?
Ms. Moore.
Through the chair, in response to this, the pathway recommendation does not provide for vehicular access. What we are suggesting is that it would be built in such a way for bicycles and pedestrians to use it. The removable bollards are intended, should there be a fire in this area, that emergency service vehicles would have access to this laneway area should the need arise. But the path is not intended to be built to carry heavy loads.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hodge.
Okay, you answered part of my question, because my first concern was the same as Councillor O'Neill raises, that we had understood the most recent plan was not to have vehicles in there. The width at 6 meters is still pretty wide, which I was then going to ask why the bollards were going to be removable. So what we're now saying is that it is possible to drive a vehicle down there in an emergency, and yet I had heard that the fire department didn't really see this as a main access route. I mean, it's still pretty wide to be able to drive a fire truck down there. And so I'd just like to know, is this actually going to be on the plan as an emergency response route and an option there? How important is it to have it there? And I guess what it's going to come down to is the width. Do we need to have 6 meters and and everything trimmed back for that one chance that we may need to get a fire truck through there? And I'd like to hear your response, and possibly that from the chief, who I see is here as well.
Okay, sounds like the chief will answer first.
Through the chair, certainly having access, not initially, that wouldn't be used for an emergency response route on an initial response, but certainly as we confirmed we had a fire, and if we needed as a tactical approach to get water on the fire, that would certainly be an advantage, but certainly would not be used on an initial approach. Only after a tactical size-up determined, that would be an asset to have.
Okay. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can't believe that a bicycle path is 6 meters. That's 20-odd feet wide for a bicycle path. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There's got to be some kind of ulterior motive in here to someday have the vehicle traffic going through there. I mean, it's been this way for years. All of a sudden, we have to pave it for bicycles. Can't the bicycles go on there right now? Of course they can. I just got great problems with what's suggested in here. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is...
Your Worship, if we could...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mr. McIntyre.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of confusion around this. If I could just make a few comments from a planning perspective, and then perhaps the transportation manager might want to comment as well. What the revised concept would be is within a 6-meter wide right-of-way, which exists to the south, like the portion from Nicola down to Thompson is a 6-meter. In that 6-meter width, in the middle of that, there would be a 3.5-meter paved path. And 3.5 meters is a little bit wider than a standard lane on a road. And the notion is to have on either side of that some green space for privacy and buffering to the neighboring properties. The width of the pathway is certainly larger than what's there now. It does allow for a variety of vehicle types. You can have bicycles passing by, you can have someone in a wheelchair, a mother with a stroller, people walking 2 or 3 abreast. It gives you that sort of room. It also gives you a little more, I would say, elbow room or through that corridor. If you look at those corridors right now, they are pretty tight. There's not very good lighting. I would imagine it's not the most inviting place, in the evening or poor light conditions. So having the wider width and a little wider pathway down the middle opens it up that way as well. It's not intended for vehicles. It's there for emergency purposes for vehicles. If, for example, like Chapman's a long one-way or east-west road, if there was a horrible accident at one end and the ambulance or fire truck could not get in an extreme emergency situation, they could use that. The bollards are there also to prevent other vehicles from going in there and to mark sort of a barrier at the end of a walkway. If someone's riding along, some kids are riding along their bikes, it's a barrier at the end of the walkway. Hey, you're coming upon a road. So it serves a number of purposes. Now, around the sort of technical specifications, if Catherine has any other comments, please.
Ms. Mahork?
Just one further additional comment. Typically on the property lines of single-family home lots, people like to have fences or shrubbery or, different elements. And so the 6-meter width with the 3.5-meter path in the middle allows some elbow room. That's literally what it is. In technical terms, we call them shy distances or clearances. And so the current best practices that are taken from our national guidelines call for this type of width, a pathway between 3 and 4 meters for two-way travel for cyclists and pedestrians. And so this is simply a reflection of that and allows some clearances so that if you're on a bicycle, I don't know if any of you have experienced that feeling when you're on a very narrow space and you feel like your elbows, you get wobbly actually. So what this is suggesting is just to conform to best practices using those national standards.
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you. I was going to raise that this is an existing 6-meter right-of-way, and the fact that it's going to be a 3.5-meter pathway. We have a lot of our greenways in the city now are designed as a 3.5-meter pathway for multi-path, multi-use access for all residents in here. So it'll also be greened up on either side of it, so it is going to have that natural look to it and keep it green along the edge of the housing. The other reason I'm chair of the Universal Accessibility Committee is one of the best things for people who are of mobility issues, whether it be wheelchairs, walkers, canes, is a paved pathway, especially a tar pathway, is the smoothest type of pathway for it. So when we are looking at opportunities in the city and from the Universal Accessibility, is if you're going to do a new pathway for people of all abilities to go through, it is best to make it a smooth paved path or tarred pathway, so everybody can use it without, if you want to restrict it and not have the full access, because in a dirt pathway, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're in a walker or some other mobility issue, and it's raining in this place in our city all the time, you're going to have difficulty getting through there. So I think we've heard from, and staff have revised the proposal before it came to us, that they've heard your comments through consultation. It is not going to be a laneway. It's going to stay as a pathway. It's going to be protected at bollards at either end to keep vehicles off it, except for in extreme emergency situations to protect the neighborhood in there for fire and stuff only. And so I want to make sure that that's clear and understand some of the reasons from the Universal Accessibility Committee and the standards that we had set through that committee to staff to apply to make sure that this is a pathway is accessible for everybody to use in their abilities. Thank you.
Okay. I also wanted to, something the fire chiefs mentioned, there's for some reason opposition to the 12 meters of, or the 12 feet of pavement. The challenge, one of the challenges we've got it with long dead ends, and we were actually at a fire on Saturday morning. Fire crews, of course, had set up with hoses right across the street in several locations because it was an apartment building fire, and as a result, a bunch of people didn't get to go to work. They don't, that's it, their day, they don't get out. Their cars are stuck inside. And in this case, all of Nicola, in the event of a fire, say at the beginning of Nicola, all of Nicola would be blocked in. And so we are trying to design that second route, even if it's not used except in the case of an emergency, to allow people's cars to get out or allow the gas company to come in with their truck to shut off gas and those sorts of issues. We can actually have, we have had them, fire crews essentially blocking off the road for 24 hours. And you can imagine if your car is now stuck in for 24 hours, you can't get your car out because it's a dead-end street that's quite long. So as many opportunities are taken to offer that second route. So I'm not sure if that was the intent here, but I'm not sure what, I've read a whole bunch of this and I understand some of the opposition to the idea of a lane, but this isn't intended to be a lane. It's not going to be a lane. It will end up with impassable to cars. Okay. Oh, Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. Sorry, but you know, to me, it's very simple. The audience in here, I guarantee you, by the time we get through tonight, there'll be everybody speaking against it. You know, I mean, for some reason, okay, wheelchairs. How did the wheelchairs get by? I never got one call in my 42 years that the fact is somehow the wheelchairs couldn't go in there because they got to be paved. I never got one, you know, but I got many other calls, okay? And, you know, I don't know that somehow this has been that way for years. The residents in the area say, don't touch it. And yet for some reason, we're saying, oh, we're not going to listen to the residents. We're going to do as we think we should do. Well, over my dead body. There's no way. That's all. Mayor, you know what? We'll be sitting here tonight.
Councillor Sikora, we're not actually debating it right now,
I know,
but I do appreciate. I do appreciate
but
it.
I can tell you what's going to happen.
We've got Danae. Oops, Councillor Reid now.
All right, through to staff. Why do we have to pave it, other than the reasons that Councillor Asmundson brought up? Why? You know, I read these as they came in. And, I mean, this is better than buying a novel. It's all great. Why? Everybody says, leave it alone. Leave it alone. Leave it alone. And we keep saying we like the natural beauty of places. Ella Bendorf's letter, I don't know if Ella's here tonight.
She couldn't make it.
It was incredible. All the things that they've done to the little path, this is precious. So why do we even have to pave it?
Your Worship, I'll just make a few comments if I can, then ask Catherine to speak to it.
And before you go, Jim, just bikes are going through there, people in strollers are going through there, little tots on their tricycles are going through there. If they're happy, why aren't we?
Good questions, Your Worship. And fair enough. Staff actually went out today to have a look at the pathway, this one, and actually the entire neighborhood. And it's a very attractive, quaint area, and I can certainly understand the residents' affection for these pathways. The one in question from Chapman down to where the extension of Nicola, it's a narrow little sort of chute that goes down there. There's hedges on one side and the sort of the woods on the other. The pathway itself would be, I didn't measure it, but it's probably no more than about 3 to 4 feet in width, if that. And it's some sort of hard surface. It looked like it might have been some cold-rolled asphalt. It is a hard, it's not a dirt surface. Elsewhere in the neighborhood, we did observe where some of the other pathways were being, I guess, maintained by city forces, and they're putting down like a gravel compact mix. So right now it is sort of a semi-hard surface, I would suggest or observe in that location. A hard surface is because, you know, with our wet weather here, dirt and loose gravel can get mucky, right? And if for vehicle or for wheelchairs, there might be that many going down through there, or, you know, strollers or bikes, going on a muddy surface as compared to a hard surface is obviously much more difficult. It requires less maintenance over time if it's a hard surface as compared to gravel. So those are just some observations. Now, I'm sure Catherine, from an engineering perspective, can add to that.
Catherine?
No.
Through the chair. With respect to the surface, I think that Councillor Asmundson actually did speak to this. It's to deal with universal access. We live in a community of aging population. There will be more and more people that will need mobility aids as we age, and the opportunity to provide a smooth surface is one that we do with land development opportunities, because we don't tend to come in and address these without the land development opportunity that this is presented. From a technical perspective, in addition, the development provides an opportunity to manage the edge, and we would need some space to do that with this. Typical single-family homes often will build fences along their back edges, quite high fences, and so you need a bit of shy distance or clearance from that edge. So the surface is recommended to be hard surface so that it can address and accommodate all modes of travel by all types of people of all ages.
Well, I guess that's interesting to me. I best practices, and there's all these new sayings, and I think they're great. And it is an aging demographic, especially in Coquitlam. And I just wonder how many 95-year-olds are going to be riding bikes in the next few years, because we're spending, not as bad as Vancouver, but we're building bike trails all over the place. And no, I'm not buying a bike.
I intend to still be riding my bike at 95.
I'm sure you will if you make 95, right. Thank you.
Okay. I have one more question, actually. I'm reading through these questionnaires, and these were filled out, it doesn't say. For example, this one wants no traffic. Bikes, children, and cars shouldn't mix on this pathway, so I don't know how the cars got in there. This one actually suggested if you're going to knock it through, it should be a two-lane narrow road with a standard sidewalk, so it should be a roadway. But that's an unusual one, because most of them say, well, if service trucks like garbage trucks use the lane, then it's going to be dangerous. So there's so many people, there's going to be traffic congestion on the lane. From my understanding, it hasn't been a lane in a long time. It has been a pathway. When was it a lane? I just want to make sure we're clear that there is no cars up and down this road. This isn't the road. When was it a vehicular lane? I remember it used to have angled corners and stuff.
The initial proposal, when staff received the subdivision, based on the advanced plan for the area at that time, the staff that review the land development applications highlighted the initial requirement for it to be a laneway. And so that came before council on September the 9th with the concept of a country lane as potentially the type of lane. It's never been an actual laneway in practice. It was only a proposal on the table. And subsequent to that, staff reviewed the amount of travel that might occur in this area, and we reviewed the area for what other sidewalks facilities are actually available. Currently, this neighborhood has very few on-street sidewalks. There's one on the south side of Chapman, but most of the local roads in this area don't have sidewalks. And so people use these pathways to travel through their neighborhood. And so when we went out and got the public input from folks around would they like to see a lane, or could they live with a country lane, the answer was a vehement no. And so staff listened to that, and at that point, based on technical input and public input, we amended our recommendation and rescinded the requirement for a lane. So this has taken over place since September.
Okay, so now it's now a path. It's going to be for people walking, people in wheelchairs, with people on bikes, but for pedestrians and cyclists in that group, and no vehicles except in dire emergencies. Is there, for example, could we only pave the 7-foot width of a normal pathway or something, and perhaps even have it meander? I don't know, to make sure that the residents are more comforted, because I hear a whole bunch of distrust out there. I think it's like they don't trust that it's going to not have vehicles on it, and the goal here is to not have vehicles on it. The goal here is to have a path. I respect that during development we can take a bit of land, or we can get enough so that we can have an emergency access point, and that makes a lot of sense. But is it possible to only pave a narrower part of it?
We could go down to 3 meters and still stay within the suggested width recommendation. So 3-meter width would narrow it by another half a meter.
So it'll be 10 feet instead of 12. I'm going to listen. I'm not sure why we're heading toward that much pavement. So, Councillor Sikora, one more time.
Sorry, one more time. Yeah, why are we not considering Nicola Street being widened and adjoined to Boyle Street? Is it Boyle Crescent?
Boyle Court.
Yeah. Why have we thought of doing that? We can expropriate some land if we need to, and make it a through street. Is there any reason why we're just got our minds made that we're not going to do that?
Well, in fact, we are going to do that, aren't we? Mr. McIntyre.
You're correct, Your Worship. That exactly is the long-term plan, is to extend Nicola to the west to connect with Boyle Court. The typical process we go through is as those long lots, either they be from Thompson north or from Chapman south, as those lots want to subdivide, the road is then extended through. They dedicate the area for the road at no cost to the city, so it doesn't cost the taxpayer money, nor are we expropriating, which is a pretty extreme step. And so as development occurs along either Chapman or Thompson, that road allowance for Nicola is being attained. My understanding is that if this rezoning goes ahead in the subdivision, it would leave two or three, 4 lots there would have to work something out for it to be extended through. My understanding is that there is one of the property owners is contemplating a development on their property would extend the road a little further, but yet there's another property owner that wants to hold out, and that is their choice to make. We don't typically take the step of expropriation on small local roads like this.
Just a brief comment. The fact is that, you know what, you're not going to spend taxpayers' money in there, and yet you're going to spend taxpayers on the things that these people don't want. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyways, let's get on with the public hearing.
This would be installed by the landowner, I suspect. This is funded out of... Ms. Mahork mentioned the opportunities of development. When development happens, we can tell the landowner that he has got to pave his sidewalk, he's got to put in the pavement for the... If we said 2 meters, he does 2 meters. If we said curb to curb with gold, well, he might not go forward with the development. But so we get this one opportunity to do it. And likewise, we'll have the opportunity when the landowners in the 72-meter section there come forward for development, we would be able to take a bit of their land and have them install a road as well at their cost, because that's the opportunities presented by development. So I've got Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Hodge again. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I initially intended to sit here quietly until I'd heard all the speakers, but it occurs to me that we're all talking, so I might as well get in. It actually occurs to me that by asking my questions, you can tell what I'm thinking about as possibilities for this, and perhaps some people may choose to address them when they speak to us. How much land do we already, what width do we own today on that lane?
Your Worship, the section between Chapman and where Nicola would extend through, there's currently a 3-meter wide road allowance for the pathway. South of Nicola down to Thompson is a 6-meter width. So the proposal is
to take it out to 6 meters so as to be the same width as the one.
You have that continuity of that right-of-way through there and to extend Nicola to the west.
And how does a 6-meter width compare to any standard streetscape that we use? In other words, I understand what's proposed at the moment for that 6-meter width, but what could potentially be developed in that 6-meter width in terms of roadway?
I think one of the questions, a normal road is 20 meters of road allowance.
Yes, for local streets, well, 20 meters is the old standard. You can go down to about a 16, 17, or 18. We have, in extreme situations, gone down to a 10-meter right-of-way width for narrow local roads. 6 meters is typically for lanes and rights-of-way pedestrian pathways. It's down at the real minimal width for. It isn't a sufficient width for the road network on its own.
And I notice it seems clear to me that the subdivision is not an issue. I don't think. Houses are fine. It's roads. And hot rods running up and down beside by, all the rest of that. And I read from some of the submissions, there's concern about loss of the existing landscaping. I mean, it may be very country, it may be very natural, but people, I gather, over the years have put a lot of effort into developing the sides of the pathway, and I guess there's some concern that those will be torn out and replaced by something developed by the city. I'm wondering, when we come to a final conclusion, whether one of the people who wrote to us talked about the possibility of handing this lane over, or this, I don't want to use the word lane, this architectural feature over to the Parks Department, saying, you look after it. Well, I'm wondering whether, the important question for the proponent is the subdivision. It's not the development of the path. And perhaps if we were to say, we'll take the land and we will then, through Leisure and Parks, we're much more natural than engineers, we'll work with the Oakdale Neighborhood Association, with the neighbors, to determine how to develop that path to the best use for the neighborhood. And that's something that I should probably talk about after we've heard all the speakers. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, and when I was in the neighborhood, and I looked at both ends of the trail here, but what I didn't look at was the end of Boyle Crescent, which I guess is actually Nicola, and right above where the 72 meters is, there is a narrow spot there. The backs of the yards don't back to back. So am I to assume that there's already some sort of a road allowance or easement? I'm just wondering why the properties don't come back to back as they do, say, in other places like, down under where it's the 254 meter mark. And just in some places up there, they don't seem to touch. I'm just wondering, do we already have easements in there? Above this, where it says 72 meter and right over to the corner of this proposal.
Your Worship, I'll just make a few comments, and some of the other staff have more of the background. What typically happens is that over time, as properties are subdivided, that is the opportunity for the municipality to get road widenings and dedication. So I would hazard a guess, if you look at the overhead there, see the property immediately to the west of the subject property. The subject property is crosshatched. See the property next door? There's a little corner carved out with a house there and a lot, and there's sort of a big panhandle. Mm-hmm. I would imagine that when that subdivision was done, that may have been back in the early 60s or early 70s. At that time, the city subdivision approving officer obtained the dedication of that road allowance. So that area back there is sitting there. From viewing it today, it looks like it's just left in natural state. But technically, legally, it's part of the road allowance of the city of Coquitlam. The one a little bit further to the west, I'm not sure just what the story is there, because it seems to have widened out and narrowed down, but sometimes there's some interesting history with some of these subdivisions as they've happened over time. And so again, and if you look further to the east along Nicola, that roadway was extended as the lands along subdivided and the opportunity presented itself. In fact, you get down to the west end of Nicola, the road allowance actually seems to jog in and out, I guess probably dependent on the timing of that subdivision.
And so I'm assuming if I had come down Boyle and got to the end, I would have either hit bush, a little trail, could have been nothing. I don't know how wide that is. I'm assuming it's not wide enough to drive a fire truck through in an emergency, or that it's hasn't even been sort of graded.
It's pretty rough at the end of Boyle. There's a bit of a grade change there. Sometimes what happens is fences kind of migrate out over time.
They join together, but if we have an easement there, I'm getting back to the concern that we're talking about having this opened in case we ever had to drive a fire truck through there. And I'm just looking, but we all sort of, I think one of the consensus is at some point Nicola is going to connect, and then we're going to have that access from each end. And that will connect in time, but I also see some sort of an allowance in there, and I'm just wondering how big that is, in what state it is. Is that something that can be brought up to provide the access? Because I look at Boyle and to the chief, if we were to have a fire at the east end of Boyle Crescent, you have no alternate access in there, even if the laneway, or if this was turned into a laneway, you're still not coming through there. So really, this is just about providing access in the event that we have to come in eastbound on the west end of Nicola. So I'm just wondering what we're really achieving by bringing it out to that standard and putting the portable, the removable pins in there, because we don't have the ability to go through there right now anyway.
Your Worship, a couple points, and perhaps the fire chief may want to comment on this as well. My observation would be that at the east end of Boyle Court, you cannot push a road through there under the current conditions. There's grade changes. It gets too narrow through there. As I said, there's some migrating fences, so you'd be onto either people's private property to take care of some of the grade issues, because it's very, very narrow. It's difficult to deal with, just building a section of road at a certain grade. Or you'd be dealing with people that would perceive that you were impacting on their property. So I really don't believe you can extend that road, even if there's and it's not a very wide corridor. You can see right at the very end there, it might be all of 8 or 10 feet. So that you have to wait in time for those adjoining lands to come forward with a subdivision and then secure the rest of that road system through there. The pathway along the east side of the subject property has been mentioned a couple times. It's through the opportunity now of the rezoning, the subdivision, secure the right-of-way width as necessary. The initial staff position was to put a laneway through there to provide for that emergency vehicle access. However, based on the opposition of the neighborhood, transportation staff have come back with a revised plan to do away with that and just simply have it for pedestrians, cyclists, people with wheelchairs and strollers.
And I realize we're talking about the real reason we're having this discussion is about a zoning application to create lots here, but it's turning into a discussion about the traffic network for an entire community, really, is what it is. And that's why I want to sort of put this in context of what the future of Nicola and Boyle and all of these other things come into play, because on paper, without this, it's probably a fairly straightforward zoning reapplication, and I suspect that when the members of the public finally get a chance to talk, we're going to hear more discussion about the pathway, laneway, trail, whatever we want to call it, and not about the houses. But I think the context of this discussion has to be put in terms of the context of the entire neighborhood and what the future holds, and also from a traffic or pedestrian functionality.
Your Worship, precisely. That was one of the takeaways for staff when we went out today, because we not only went to the subject property and walked up and down, we drove all through the neighborhood to get a real good feel for it. And my observation as we left is this is something that we need to address in the Coquitlam-Lougheed neighborhood plan process. We need to look at the overall neighborhood, work with the residents, and see what's needed in terms of improved accessibility through that neighborhood, for the residents themselves. So I think there's a piece that through that neighborhood neighborhood planning process. We need to focus in here, work with the people there, and see what can be attained.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Now, this isn't how public hearings normally go. Normally, we hear a lot from the public. But we're trying to work this out, too, because we're trying to figure out how this progressed and how we ended up where we're at. So thank you very much. We have the next speaker, number 2 already, Danae Peaker. In order to make up time, you have 30 seconds.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Danae Peaker. I live at 649 Chapman Avenue. The Oakdale footpaths have been in our community for some 50 years, and many of us here tonight have lived in the Oakdale-Burquitlam area for more than 30 years. We've used the footpaths and introduced them to new neighbors with pride. We have maintained the gardens at either ends of these footpaths to make them attractive and inviting for the many homeowners in our area who use them regularly. The footpaths join together several neighborhoods and are used as safe routes to and from 2 elementary schools by young children. In short, the footpath in question is used by cyclists and pedestrians continually, with no issue as to surface or width. On November 7th, the developer of 606 Chapman held a public information meeting at Miller Park School to showcase the plans for the proposed subdivision on Country Lane. As Councillor Hodge said, there is no issue with the subdivision. The issue is with the lane. 50 people attended, and the result was a resounding "leave the footpath alone." Last week, we heard that city staff had backed off a bit and were proposing to widen the footpath, blacktop it, and put bollards at either end. Come on. This footpath is natural, attractive, and functional. What part of no don't you understand? We don't want a country lane, a road, or any form of vehicular access on that footpath. Having any form of vehicular traffic come onto Chapman from that footpath ever will simply exacerbate the already difficult traffic problems on Chapman. We have requested traffic calming from city staff for the speeders who use Chapman like a raceway and been told that our problems are not that serious. They certainly will be that serious if you have cars or any vehicles coming out of that footpath where the sight lines are poor and there is a crosswalk right there. You'll increase the danger to cyclists and pedestrians not only on the footpath but also on Chapman if this plan is implemented. We acknowledge that the Nicola connection will ultimately have to cross the footpath, but beyond that there's huge opposition. The Oakdale-Burquitlam area is going through enormous changes with all the development associated with the Evergreen line. We've had to make concessions for high-rises, townhouses, appropriations, road closures, and the like. Enough already.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Wayne Ellick. He's at 586 Chapman. Sorry, Denny was at 649.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. My name is Wayne Ellick. I reside at 586 Chapman. I've lived there for the last 23 years. My concern is the volume of traffic on our street. I haven't been attending any of these meetings. I've been out of town, but I've been updated. In the last couple of days, on November 21st, between 7 and 8, 67 cars, 28 speeders. On Friday, November 22nd, I counted over 60 cars with 15 speeders. The street can't take any more congested distractions as of the country road approach. There's been a head-on collision on our street. We've complained to council and the members here. I look around, I see my neighbors here, and they're all telling you and sending you a message that it's just not going to work. Our concern is, again, with the traffic. I understand with the country lane that the city won't be servicing it. I understand that we that live on the street are responsible for cutting the grass and snow removal. Maybe I can get councillors' names and call them when that day comes that we need you to come out there. Maybe Lou will come out. Nicola, to my understanding, since 1962, was a street designated, which is on the drawings, which I have from one of my neighbors that developed in the back there. It makes no sense to me why we don't expropriate and continue that. So, you know, I had some other questions and stuff, but there's answers here and questions and answers that are going to be brought up to you. For safety reasons and costs and servicing this country lane makes no sense. So some of the things I've heard, I don't know politics that well, but the excuses that I get or that I hear from this side just makes no sense. I use that footpath every day. I have a bad knee, as yourself, Richard, with a bad back, and I ride a bike. There's no problems. We've never had people on the street complaining about the width or what have you. I think to settle all of this, continue bowl court, and I think that would resolve everything. We can't live in a fairy tale world where we're going to put 20 feet wide in country lanes. It just doesn't work. Thank you.
Councillor Nicholson.
I actually have a question for Mr. Ellick, if you don't mind. So, because I want to be really clear. So you made some comments about traffic, and they weren't unexpected or surprising. And you talked about the footpath, country lane, the various choices that have to be made there.
Yeah.
But when I talked a few minutes ago, I said it seemed to me that this was not about the subdivision. It was about the...
You're absolutely right. And
I want to make it clear why I'm asking the question, because this is going to increase density, and that is going to increase traffic, and traffic seems to be an issue, but it's not the issue. Is that correct?
It is part of the key issue. The other issue is monster homes with parking along the street. We brought that to your attention. The only councillor that approached me when I made a call was Lou Sikora. We have homes that are 10 bedrooms with 11 bathrooms on 35-foot lots, 5,000 square foot homes. Where are they going to park? They're certainly not going to park in front of my house, and we have 2 homes across the street from my place. It's just not the right plan. And I think it's time to go back to the drawing board as the people have spoken and take a second look at it. You know, let's just make it user-friendly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I will tell you this: council is working on or staff are working on a proposal, a staff report to council on the Monster House issue. I actually came out of a motion from Councillor Sikora. We all are concerned about that issue, and one of the measures you can do is to make these smaller lots and try to subdivide rather than have great big lots and massive houses, and that's among the things that we have to deal with. But I acknowledge Councillor Nicholson's comment that along here the traffic we're concerned about, and I've stood there and watched the same cars that you watched. The traffic we're concerned about doesn't live there. They live somewhere else, and they're using it as a shortcut. And I understand that. We've got work to do there, too.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Jyoti Talzania. Mr. Talzania at 610 Chapman.
I'm just going to read some of the notes that I have. You know, this way I can keep my thoughts together, and I'll just touch whatever is important. First of all, I would like to thank the mayor and the councillors for their opportunity to express my feelings and the feelings about the subdivision and the footpath. I would also like to congratulate the new councillors, Chris Wilson and Bonita Zarello. Yeah, welcome. My name is Jyoti Talsania. I live at 610 Chapman Avenue, which is next to the proposed subdivision at 606 Chapman Avenue. If I may, I would like to touch base to what brought us here tonight. On September 9th, 2013, the Council was presented with an application to pass the subdivision for 606 Chapman Avenue. One of the conditions for the subdivision was to replace the footpath along the length of the property with proposed road access. The access road from Chapman to Nicola was included as part of the subdivision without consulting the neighborhood. When the Council questioned the transportation planning, the access road term changed to the country lane, and now we are coming to paved. So I don't know what the agenda is. It seems this process is to open a floodgate to other roads and bring more traffic to the neighborhood, and that doesn't fit well with the neighborhood. We want to retain the footpath as it is, or even improve the footpath to make it into a park. Now, on November 7th, consultation session was held at the residents unanimously voted to reject the country lane concept or any form of vehicle access for traffic on the footpath. The recent petition submitted with the added neighborhood from Bowen Street, Nicola and Thompson have requested the Council to retain the footpath. Even they don't want the traffic to come from Chapman Avenue. Transportation planning says Chapman Avenue is a long street, so we need to break that street for the pedestrian and the traffic to go through. Well, the pedestrians are happy. They can use the footpath. Perhaps they are worried about the traffic, and they do not care for the pedestrian of the neighborhood. For over 50 years, Chapman has been as it is. The pedestrians have the footpath, which is quite convenient to cut through the neighborhood. The city planning has always encouraged the development of Nicola Avenue. Some 14 years ago, when the lots were developed on Nicola Avenue, transportation planning wanted to access through the lots, and the group of 10 property owners opposed the road, and the road didn't go through. Now, the transportation has come back to take over our footpath and replace it with vehicle traffic. Only this time, the whole neighborhood is against the lane access. Nobody wants this blacktop to go on our footpath. When I bought the property, I did exactly what the mayor mentioned at September 9th hearing, and that is, before you buy a property, be aware of what you are buying. Well, what I bought had footpath next to my property, and there was no mention of turning footpath into vehicle lane. There is 3 meters of right-of-way. Perhaps that was set aside for service, not for a road or vehicle traffic. Also, as for city planning, Nicola Avenue always has been in the planning to join Ball Court. Tonight, I stand here like anyone here would do if the city wanted to build a road next to your property. The access road entrance and my driveway, including from the development, would be putting each other close by, and I feel threatened for the safety of our family. There won't be any separation between the road coming in to the footpath and my driveway. Likewise, for the new development, it'll be the same situation. So people would be cutting right through to access the road.
Are you able to wind up?
Now, finally, I have a solution which may satisfy everyone. the neighborhood wants to retain the footpath as is, or perhaps even improve it to preserve the area as green space. The transportation planning wants access for service vehicle. So now, as per the subdivision engineering drawing, Nicola Avenue is approved to be constructed to serve 3 lots on the south side. So the road is going to go as far as the proposed subdivision. So this only leaves 2 more lots, 598 and 592, west of 606 Chapman, to go through to connect Bowl Court. All the services are also approved to run on Nicola and join Bowl Court. While the ground is prepared to install the services, then why not have 606 property developer spend money to finish off the remaining 2 lots with a strip of asphalt for the service vehicle to go through the Bowl Court?
Sir, we're going to have to get you to wrap up.
Sorry?
We're going to have to get you to wrap up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's possible. Rather than the developer spending money on the footpath, which is 215 feet of length, they would have to go for only 150 feet to extend Nicola to join Bowl Court. It is feasible, it's possible. This way the property owners who want to subdivide would be encouraged to go ahead and subdivide their property. Put a asphalt lane on Nicola just to finish the tail end. Thank you.
I understood exactly what you're saying. We don't own that land. If you did own the land, you'd probably be quite upset right now with someone else standing at the microphone saying, why don't you just take some of their land and make it work? So that's our challenge with that one.
It shows the city owns quite a bit of laneway, and the property owners, like 597 on Thompson Avenue, is waiting for the road to come through, and he's willing to give part of his property for the road.
I understand. There's still a holdout. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, our next one is Ben Craig. Ben's he doesn't have his address here, so he'll have to give it to us.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. Congratulations to our newest council members. Evening, staff. My name is Ben Craig. I live at 639 Elmwood. I'm with the Oakdale Neighborhood Association. We represent roughly 600 homes in the Coquitlam region. And my comments tonight relate to the development at 606 Chapman, specifically the proposal to pave the natural footpath on the eastern border of that development. My group is here tonight to oppose this plan. We're grateful to Council for insisting that staff hold a public information meeting before the approval of this plan. The meeting was held last week, and the rich history of that footpath was relayed by a number of attendees, including grandparents at the meeting telling stories of using that footpath when they were just toddlers. These footpaths go back more than 50 years in our neighborhood. More recently, our group, the Oakdale Neighborhood Association, held a contest for local kids in the neighborhood. We invited them to name this footpath and 3 other footpaths that connect our area. So this footpath in question tonight is affectionately known as Pin Oak Footpath by a 12-year-old resident, Celia Doso, the winner of that contest. So I think it's evident from the comments tonight we wish to keep this footpath in its present form. These historic passageways through our area have been working just fine for decades. And until staff can articulate a strong rationale for altering the Pin Oak footpath, our group, along with residents in the area, stand opposed to any such a plan. Now, it's interesting, staff have insisted all along the way that they're not going to force this project upon us, the neighbors of Oakdale. But when 50 residents cram into a local school library last week with a common message of leave our footpath alone, when a petition is signed by over 100 residents of the area with the same message, when council chambers is filled up tonight with residents of the area who've taken time out of their busy lives, be away from their families in some cases, to voice their opposition, when we see staff forging ahead with this agenda in the face of such opposition, we have to ask what part of our message is not being heard. And just a final comment with regard to the universal access. It's an interesting point. However, if you're intimate with the geography of that area, the proposed paving only goes halfway up the footpath. So in terms of addressing universal access, I'm not sure what they expect people in their wheelchairs to do, pack it up on the second half of the footpath and walk the rest of the way? So the footpath itself that's being paved is smack dab in the middle of 3 other footpaths in the neighborhood that interconnect the neighborhood. And just paving the one portion of the footpath while leaving the rest alone doesn't make any sense at all. If we were in court today, I'd ask for that to be stricken off the record, because it doesn't make any sense to pave one small portion of the footpath for universal access, because the paths on either side aren't paved. So that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor, first off, we do that all the time. You start paving and you continue paving as either the development proceeds or whatever. So it's, and the first time we did a cutout for wheelchairs, I'm not sure the wheelchair users were complaining that we only cut out that one and we didn't cut out the next one, because we eventually cut out the next one. We're trying to make our community more wheelchair accessible. The pavement, that's a small consideration related to the pavement, I suspect, but that's one of the realities that we have to do. We can't do it all at once. So, Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, good question. And Mr. Craig raised a question that as I've been studying this map, had been in my own mind wondering about, and that is the future of the pathway between Nicola and Thompson, which is, I guess, seen as a continuation of this. Are there immediate plans to do anything? If not, when would something be done, given that we don't foresee development applications in that area? Is that in the report? Is there a long-term plan? Is that part of our walkability thing? Is there funding? Or I'm just sort of wondering, I mean, this is an opportunity to get this section done, and we do things in sections, including roads, but is there a master plan for this trail network?
Through the chair. The Strategic Transportation Plan does identify the section of pathway between Thompson and Chapman as part of the cycling plan. So there could be work to improve the south portion along Thompson in accordance with Council's wishes for expanding bike routes in the area. In addition, the OCP for this area actually identifies enhanced cycling and pedestrian facilities. It's part of the current Coquitlam neighborhood plan. And so pending the outcomes of the Coquitlam neighborhood plan process, there could be priorities for these areas to enhance these pathways as part of that as well.
And the funding would come presumably out of a fund for that, and again, it's just then a priority of where that money gets spent, because we would not necessarily have money from developers without any development happening on either side of that path. The path would either stay on the books as being a future plan, or we would have to take money from one of our funds to complete it as part of a walkability network or bike path network. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, Mr. Craig said that, and I wasn't sure if he's talking about how much is going to be paved and how much isn't of this proposal. He said the path will only be paved halfway. Was he referring to the, maybe Mr. Craig, come back to the microphone, was he referring to the path between Chapman and Nicola, or was you think that only half of the Nicola to Chapman path will be paved, or the unpaved part, is that what you're referring to as Nicola and Thompson, that part of it?
So the pathway itself extends from Chapman to Thompson, okay? The paved portion, or the proposed paved portion of that pathway extends from Chapman to the middle, which is Nicola.
Nicola, okay, good. I thought you were suggesting that only half of that portion was going to be paved.
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
It's funny, I grew up in Coquitlam, and we were begging for 30 years for our lanes to be paved, and there are still some lanes in Coquitlam that aren't paved, and we've got a community that's begging us not to pave the lane. And it's not even a lane. So. Okay. Tess Trethewey. Sorry. And that's 531 Chapman. Tess. Okay. There you go. The next one up will be Donna Oglen.
Okay, I didn't print it, and a lot of the comments have changed anyway. Thank you, Your Honor and Council. I live at 531 Chapman Ave, and I've got 2 young kids, and we love walking down this path, and I'm part of the residents that don't want this to be changed. I did attend the public information hearing and appreciate you guys changing from the country lane with the vehicles and with all those little arrows taking cars onto Chapman into a non-vehicular path. I think what you're hearing a lot of tonight is a bit of a trust issue that was very harshly pushed at that public information evening, how important it was to have a road, and it was all about the road. With this paved 3.5 meter path, I think that's where a lot of us have still got some hesitations with the more recent change, just to make sure that that's actually going to continue and we won't be sharing our path with the cars. On the note of accessibility, it makes a lot of sense to have a nice wide path, but I would also ask you, where are they going to go? Other than Chapman, there's none of those roads have got sidewalks. So while I understand the comment of we'll build it as we come, is there any way that this money can be provisioned to actually put sidewalks on the other roads instead? Especially as you look at a SkyTrain coming in. When we're walking to the SkyTrain, these paths are our only area where I don't have to worry about my son walking on the road. He's 3. And my 1-year-old, it's, you know, there are only stress-free park to walk to the SkyTrain. I don't know if that happens in funds, in being able to shift them around to improve a different part of the neighborhood. On the 3-meter pathway as well, you know, we just recently got the sidewalk approved, which has not yet been built on North Road. And that's a really busy road where the sidewalk's going to be right beside the cars, traveling at ridiculous speeds because there's no stop signs, and I know you guys have heard all about it. But that lane is only slated to be 1.5 meters wide, and that's also a biking lane. So I'm hearing some inherent contradictions in terms of where our priorities are and what's really necessary for safe travel, either by bicycle or by foot. That North Road lane, by the way, is a designated bicycle path, and right now it's just a 2-lane, full-speed road. There's no bike area, and there's no area for safe biking on the side. One last thing on the topping, and a lot of this, I'm sorry, is winging it based off things tonight. The hard top versus asphalt. The one input I would have there is that a lot of the pathways in Glen Eyre are paved, and actually the hard top actually works pretty well. It doesn't tend to, the compact dirt that we have today, it doesn't tend to get puddles in it. Whereas what I find is once you've asphalted it, we run out of funds to actually maintain it, and then we're dealing with holes and roots and all that kind of stuff that seems to be a little bit easier to walk on today. My son rides on a scooter, and it's actually easier on that than the pavement. I'll throw that comment out there too. In the larger context, we're talking about one small path here. Right now that extends all the way actually from Chapman to Thompson, which is why Ben's comment was about it paving halfway. If you look on the other side of Thompson on the map, you'll also see another path that connects it up to Kemsley. This is really a bigger context picture for us because those 2 properties on the right side of that path were for sale this summer as a redevelopable property. It ends up being like a 4 or 2 really big lots right beside each other. So what we're seeing as neighbors is that I've got these 2 great paths to get me to the SkyTrain in the Safeway. One of them's in jeopardy right now. The other one would likely follow if this same idea of this north-south connection were to keep going. So that's one of the comments just on, it's not just about this path, it's about the next path too. The last one is on traffic. I know there's a lot of push to connect Nicola through to Bowl. The one comment I would have living on Chapman is that cars are going ridiculously fast. Because there is no stop sign, there's only a stop sign, at the end of Chapman, and there's no calming of any kind along Chapman, and then you hit North Road, which is a whoop-de-woo of a hill, and there's again no stopping. It is actually faster for the cars on Nicola and Thompson to come up through Chapman to get out to Burnaby than to have to deal with all the traffic and mess of weaving their way through the neighborhood. part of what I'm worried about in connecting Nicola and Bull is the additional traffic pouring out onto Chapman. Okay. So in the last one, I'll just read from the Coquitlam official community plan where it says, our goal is to expand the parkland in the neighborhood, acquire additional parkland, and develop urban greenways defined as enhanced pedestrian and biking routes, including street trees, benches, and bicycle lanes. Given the context of that, what I would ask is if you are going to expropriate or take over this extra 3 meters of pathway, that you could maybe not cut down some of the trees. There are some lovely trees in that section of the owner's land right now, and add some benches. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Asmundson may have a question for you.
Well, just to point out to you is that, from the universal accessibility point of view, I mean, we can look at the surface of... Well, okay, is that better?
That's better.
Okay. From the universal accessibility standards, when we started this in the city about 25 years ago, and I think Councillor Mayor Stewart pointed out earlier that, when we first did curb cuts, that was very few spots to do it, and there's a lot of gaps. We're still filling in gaps on curb cuts and stuff throughout the city and continuing to make it more accessible as we go along. So while it may not be from Nicola down to Thompson, because there's no opportunity right now, we have an opportunity here. Now, maybe through to staff, they can look back at that hard surface. Maybe it is a wearable surface. From the committee and their recommendations over the past, in past and performance of past, has been their preference over concrete has been asphalt because it's a smooth surface without any joins in the middle. And when you're talking about concrete, they're actually talking about like a saw cut, so it's and smooth surface. So the regular ridge that comes along can be a difficulty. So there's a lot of things that we've grown and gotten better in time, even from our walk signals. When you hear we're doing some new ones at Guilford and Pine Tree and Lougheed Barnett that we're testing out for the blind stuff. So we're always looking at upgrading and improving and taking steps. Sidewalks throughout the city, it's unfortunately today in our subdivision bylaws, you have to put sidewalks in when you reduce subdivision. Back in the days when these were done, it wasn't a requirement, and that's a miss. And so we have a fund to do sidewalks, but we have this area, we have the Millardville area, we have tons of areas. But I would like to see this path, as we get into the Coquitlam plan, to continue a hard surface and a long hard surface on all this pathway here so that people have this safe, quiet route out to their area, that it stays in good shape and long term and it's usable. I'm not stuck on the 3 meters. It can come down even less to that as long as you can get people by. It doesn't have to be that wide. I'm willing to adjust that down even further on that to maintain your pathway. My point is and dealing with the people in my committee in universal accessibility, is to have a pathway system that functions for everybody and works for everybody. And we're starting to put these in. If we just ignore this now, we lose an opportunity, and we can leave it as is, but you lost an opportunity to upgrade and continue. And that would be like saying before, well, let's not bother to put that letdown in because we don't think it's needed, it's not going to connect up. But we've taken the time over the years to make those connections, build up a better connectivity. I drive bus for transit. When I first started, none of our buses were low floor. We got lifts. Now we have low floor buses. And those are used more not by people in wheelchairs, but by people with walkability, mobility that need the bus because they can't step up. I would say 90% of the people that want the bus kneeled aren't in wheelchairs. They're people with mobility, walking issues. My wife is looking at having her knees replaced. She's going to need issues and help stepping up and stuff in the future. So that's the problem we look at and where we're trying to go with this. And it's just a progression. Thank you.
Councillor Hodge. No? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I made a comment earlier. We have other neighborhoods where we'll quite often have people come to us and say, don't allow this subdivision unless you get an extra few feet of extra pathway, and I want it. They'll say, we don't allow this subdivision unless we get wider. Give us a wider lane, give us more of this, give us a sidewalk on both sides, and all of those things. There's some of those we can do, and there's some of them we can't. We can do typically those kinds of things that are right adjacent to a property, but there's been a request, for example, could we convert it into sidewalks for the neighborhood? And we can't. We inherit a neighborhood that doesn't have sidewalks, and we end up having to do sidewalks bit by bit. Because it's extremely expensive to go into a neighborhood and have the taxpayers fund the sidewalks. Here, the developer will fund some of the things that are right adjacent, and that's the challenge we're working with now, and we're trying to find the right mix. So thank you very much, all of you. Our next one is Donna Fogelin. So we got to get the microphones. They were working really well last meeting.
There was a weekend event in which they took the whole cell system apart in here.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Donna Fogelin, and I live in the Oakdale neighborhood on Gardena Drive. I've lived there since my son was 2, and he's 10 now. Goes to Glen Eyre Elementary. We walk that path every day. We walk a series of the paths into Glen Eyre every day. So my initial reaction was that it was going to be the country lane, and you could imagine my horror. Bit nervous, excuse me. Clarke is the next option if that were to ever become a roadway for all of us to direct our traffic. Like some other speakers have mentioned, there's SkyTrain stations coming. For us, this is such an integral part of why our neighborhood is so great to live in. I have 2 dogs. I walk my son to school and back every day. I walk my dogs probably for an hour and a half. I can get from my home near Clarke and Como Lake to College Park in Port Moody without ever touching a busy street. The busiest street that I cross actually is Chapman. And it's a crosswalk that's marked that people rarely stop at, which is frightening for my son. So for me, I don't actually want to see Nicola go through it all, because it's a nightmare on Chapman. Before I got married, I lived in a basement suite at 574 Chapman. It's a nightmare. And I would hate to see that happen to Nicola, because people are in a race to get to go where they're going. And traffic is congested. The recent SkyTrain traffic is going to make that worse. I just need for you to understand how integral all of these pathways are now and how they are going to be in the future once we have a SkyTrain system. People are going to be walking or on wheelchairs. I'm not personally opposed to a portion of it being paved. I'd like the natural thing of it. I've come to know the local coyotes quite well. They're scared of my dogs now. But this is truly why I like living where I live. I'm not far from everything. I can get to Burnaby and Vancouver, New Westminster very quickly, yet I'm in a neighborhood. Yet I can go for long walks with my husband and my son. We can go for a bike ride without ever having to worry about dealing with too much traffic. Like I said, my only concern for traffic right now is Chapman. And you've heard that plenty of times. I'm also looking forward to that sidewalk going on North Road, because we walk down to that as well. So for me, I believe in one form or another, paved or not, that this pathway and all the pathways need to be protected for even as development happens in the community in years to come. They're an integral part of making us healthier, happier, and more connected as a community. Thank you.
Councillor Hodge.
A couple of speakers back, we've heard a couple of people talk about certainly trust. I think I don't know if it's trust or just an uncertainty of the future. And certain, one of the things we've heard is that this is the way it's been for 50 years, and now it may have to change. And some people don't want change. I think there's some people that are certainly expressing concerns about the future here. And certainly traffic, and I understand traffic on Chapman. My wife and I used to own the house at 632 Chapman, so I used to see the traffic at 7:30 in the morning out my window. So I completely understand the traffic issues on Chapman. But I look at this as a footpath. And I hear talk, certainly best practice would be that we start to pave it and make it more accessible. And now where I live today, up in Burke Mountain, we have a trail network. Some are paved, some are hard surface, and they allow pedestrians and bicycles to move throughout the neighborhood on a dedicated trail system, which I think is the ultimate plan of what we're having here. But I'm just wondering, up on Burke Mountain, those trails, even though they function as pedestrian and bike routes, are they maintained by the citizens there? Are they maintained by Parks and Leisure? I mean, are they linear parks? I'm just wondering who looks after the trails in other parts of the city, because there seems to be this sort of idea that this is going to be a road and it's going to be looked after by engineering, and somewhere down the road, the future, it may actually be a road. But in other parts of the city, we don't have this concern about the future of our trail network. And I'm just wondering if what I'm hearing tonight is maybe a little anxiety about the future rather than what the actual purpose of Pin Oak Trail is going to be.
Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, I'll try to offer a few comments, and perhaps some of the engineering staff might want to bail me out. It's unfortunate there is a mistrust issue here, because that's certainly not staff's intention. I think, in fact, moving from one position to another and on, I think we try to be receptive to that. At the end of the day, it's for Council's decision, and we'll try to assist you with that. In terms of the maintenance, and this is one of the things that struck me too today when we're out there, is that the neighborhood has really come to take possession of a lot of these walkways. At the entrance to this particular one, there's a nice little landscape garden area, and you see signposts at some of the other pathways through the neighborhood. So you can certainly, it's very clear the neighborhood is very close to these pathways. In terms of the maintenance, my general understanding is that unless it's in a park, like a linear park or a park area where our Parks and Rec outside staff would maintain those areas. Walkways, like roadways, are part of the public road system that our operations staff and engineering would maintain. I'm not sure how much maintenance is done in this area. That's one of the things we can go back and check with the maintenance staff. It looks like it's pretty minimal, though I did mention as earlier, and I believe it was with the walkway down between Thompson and Kemsley, there seemed to be some recent gravel being placed and compacted on that, so I imagine our operations staff have been out doing that.
Could this still function the same if it were a linear park as opposed to a road dedication?
The linear park would be different in tenure, that it's a park as opposed to being part of the road. What's beside there now is, I believe, legally the road. The first 3 meters, the 6 meters down below is roadway. There may be an option at Council's direction for staff to go away and maybe rethink what that pathway may look like in terms of the width. I heard some comments around Council about the width. Certainly the landscaped areas along the edges to give that little bit of a buffer to the properties next door might be also a direction as well. So there may be a bit of a modified solution for the pathway, but as part of the road dedication.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And that's it. So now we'll open the floor to anyone else who might have comments about this issue.
And, you know, I must say I have my voice about this planned footpath, what is supposed to be widened now. Why is it done now? And the mistrust, and I must say I do not trust, because at first, the proposal was for car traffic to go right from Bowron along Nicola and up north, and it was indicated at the meeting on the 7th of November that the traffic was supposed to go up to Chapman. So no wonder that we now worry that the extension means not only from Chapman to Nicola, but from Nicola to Thompson and who knows where else. Maybe you want to go beside the school too. And once we lose our green spaces, they are gone forever. Why widen this footpath now? Because I have my shopping cart to go along sidewalks, and do you know, sometimes I can hardly have my shopping cart beside me when there is even a lamppost, and nobody from the people in charge of traffic worry about the narrow sidewalks we have along Clarke Road. And here, all of a sudden, it becomes very important. Though we needed accessible for the wheelchairs, for bicycles, that they can go past. I cannot go even with two people sometimes along the sidewalk because there are even lampposts. The subdivision as such, I think it's fine as long as there is enough parking space, because when on my street even there are people constantly parking at the curb, and it's very difficult for the sweepers to clean. And when this happens there, that should be much more worried for the fire department, that they can access these properties on the south side of Chapman for 606. And when Nicola goes through all the way to the last lot on 606 Chapman now, then I don't see any necessity to have a laneway accessible for vehicles, because this is the ultimate goal as far as I'm concerned. And I think it is an expense that could be saved, and much rather, I think we have problems here with the audio system. The money should be spent on that. So thank you very much.
Does anyone want to try to follow that?
I'll try. I'll go afterwards. Okay. Mayor, Council, my name is Dave Irving. I live at 981 Gilroy. I was the founding president of the Oakdale Heritage Society, which is now the Oakdale Neighborhood Association. And one of our founding mandates was actually that we were going to make the neighborhood more walkable. Thus, you got the pathways with the little gardens in front of them and all that kind of stuff going on. I think what you've done, the staff just ran afoul of the neighborhood when they said they were going to put traffic on that, because we looked at the property and we actually asked staff 10, 15 years ago to look at that whole property be a park. But now they come back and it's going to be subdivided, and nobody's really got a problem with that, but there's no access to the back, right? There is no access right now off Nicola. You got that little orange bit there, but that's other people's property. Do you actually have that piece of property? Because it's not there right now. So it's not part of this proposal. It's not in there. So everybody thought you're putting a lane through to get to the back of this property to subdivide it. But I was a co-author of a traffic calming submission we put in about 10 years ago before the Hickey incident and everything died. But if you pan, can you pan right a little bit here on this picture up here? No, it's the document. Oh, okay. If you look here, where we get all the traffic off of Clarke Road onto Chapman is blocked during rush hour. So before 9 o'clock, but you can turn down Thompson, because Thompson goes down, it dead ends. The other end. It dead ends on Stony Creek at the Mediated Learning Academy. So traffic can still turn there. They've got to get to the school somehow, right? So you can't reduce the right-hand turn there. But once Once you open up Nicola right through, they're going to come down Thompson, they're going to turn on Bowron, they're going to shoot down Nicola and come on Chapman. I've got no doubt about it. So you really need to look at putting a choke point there, because once that road's opened up, everybody going to the school, everybody coming up Clarke that's backed up a little bit, they already turn illegally. They get ticketed all the time at Chapman. 8:30 in the morning, you'll see cars there, the police are there, and you got to be really careful there. I don't know if staff has ever looked at, I was just down in Australia, and I noticed on a lot of the roads, they'll choke it down to one lane, just to have it opposing traffic so it's not a good flow through. At the top of Gilroy, when they repaved, they wanted to widen it out. We asked them to keep it narrow because we don't want cars shooting up and down. You get choked up with cars, and people don't use the road because they can't get through. And at the very, very minimum, I think you should consider where you put the pathway through, at least put in a raised crosswalk, something so that the pedestrians who are now totally safe because there's no cars there at all of a sudden there's going to be cars coming through. If you can just do something to help them out. Anything?
I just have a...
Yep. Yeah, Councillor Asmussen.
Well, no, and I've looked at this in the extension of Nicola, and I know there's been different points we've heard from some people saying, opened up, some people said, well, I got concerns about that.
It's a rat's nest.
Yeah, my only one suggestion, I've seen it done in some other places, is since there's a grade change there where the Boulder Court comes up to Nicola there, is some areas what they've done is they put a cul-de-sac in there with bollards there. So you come down off, you hit a cul-de-sac where it's dead end there now, and you bring Nicola in the future and those projects develop to that, but it's only for emergency service vehicles, so it depends what the community want when that comes up, but it's an option that it keeps people from rat running, but it allows if there's fire service have to go through there, they can get through there.
See, there is a lane at the other end.
I know.
It goes on to Chapman. I mean, I would love to just see Nicola, I don't have a problem with people subdividing the back of the property, but if we could somehow just bring it up, put some bollards there, cul-de-sac it, and then if they have to get through, they can pull them out, emergency vehicles.
That was my suggestion.
Yeah.
But I think something that we can deal with that when we go into Coquitlam. I think we have to do some transportation, traffic issues in this area when we get further down that road there. Because I do see, as you guys have all said, that Nicola Avenue would be just another cut route to go around.
You've only got 3 properties still blocking it, right? So it's going to be soon.
And I drive by them. I drive buses and I go the buses past, so I know the whole bottleneck of Clarke, Chapman, all through there, right? So, but that's just a suggestion for you guys, for staff to think about when they get to that. It's an idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a part of the challenge we face in every corner of our community, and I'm going to hand it over to Councillor Hodge to solve, because Councillor Hodge was responsible for the Hickey Street, traffic calming that got put in, screamed at, and then removed all in the course of 6 months. And that's the neighborhood I live in, actually. We've got Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, just the last speaker raised a question about the orange strip and the ownership of the land where the Nicola would be extended. Who owns that land? How will that be developed? Who will pay for that? Staff could answer that on behalf of the last speaker who is sort of asking that question.
Ms. Tiffany.
Thank you. Through the chair, am I on? Excellent. That orange strip section, each portion of it is owned by the property owners to the north as well as to the south. As part of the subdivision application, this section will be improved, meaning it will be paved, curbed, gutter, sidewalks on the north side of Nicola as part of the condition of subdivision and subject to the subdivision development servicing bylaw works and services requirements.
And what's happening to the south part of Nicola? There.
As those lots develop and are further subdivided, because there's the potential for those lots directly to the south that front onto Thompson to subdivide, each one of those lots can subdivide into 2 separate lots. Actually, there's a Jay, if you could go to the...
Well, before you leave that, then what will Nicola look like there? Will it be just half of a street, just the north half of it? And will it just be one lane there, or will there be 2 lanes on Nicola?
We could just bring up the, go back one. There we go. I don't know if we can zoom in on that. But what that shows you, if you can read that, nope.
Lost it there.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one we want to show. Yeah, unfortunately, I guess we can't zoom in on that. You'll see lots A, B, and C, that front on Thompson Avenue, and there's a dashed line through those lots. That shows what the subdivision potential is for those particular lots. And if those 3 lots subdivide, at that time, those improvements along the southern portion of Nicola Avenue would be completed.
So at this stage, then, if this goes through, there will be... on the 3 southern lots, we'll have a sidewalk and then a 6-meter wide road? Is that what that says? I say 6M road there. Or will part of the 6 meters be the sidewalk?
Okay, so it's it will be 6 meters of pavement on the northern portion of Nicola.
And then a sidewalk, and then the 3 homes along there.
Correct.
Okay, I hope that answers the question that was raised by the speaker. Thank you.
So it'll be finished municipal standards on the north side of Nicola, and on the south side it'll be just ragged because we're actually paving a little edge of right against the property line, pending the development and subsequent dedication of that section of Nicola.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. El Camino is an example of that. Okay. Please come forward, sir.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. There's a reason for distrust around here. In this one meeting, we've heard that, no, this is only going to be a pathway. Oh, yes, we will allow fire engines and police cars, and hydro vehicles. Please tell me, if it's not road ready, how a 25-ton fire truck is going to go down this pathway? And my next question is, conveniently on the east side of Chapman, where Nicola and Chapman meet, there is a laneway. And there is no way that that laneway is the minimum 16 meters like staff has told us earlier this evening. So with everything that we're told, there's very good reasons for distrust around here. And you know what? I take that path almost daily and I walk my dog. And the last thing I need is the same situation we have where Nicola and Chapman meet, where drivers do not stop and just bomb right through that laneway onto Chapman. I've almost been hit. My neighbors have almost been hit. There's quite a few reasons for the distrust. I really want to know how a fire engine will drive down a pathway meant for wheelchairs and bicycles. If staff could please answer that question.
Well, they do. We have paths like that. There's one not far from my home. It's been there with bollards. I think the bollards have been removed twice in 20 years. In both cases, the residents were very, very happy that there were bollards there so that they could be removed so that emergency crews, once fire, but once I think it was actually Terracin, back when it was Terracin, because of a gas issue.
So that pathway will be road ready and will be available to take a heavy truck, right?
I'm going to put that question to staff right now.
Please, thank you.
Ms. Morg.
The recommendation at this time is to build the pathways suitable for loads of bicycles and pedestrians. If a fire truck vehicle needed access through, it would provide the space, but it is not being built road ready because that would place undue cost on the developer to prepare a pathway that in fact is, for all intents purposes, being built as a road. So there's no plan to build it as a road. The plan is to provide enough space width-wise to accommodate the need, should the need be there for a fire truck to drive through. With respect to your question on the lane on the east end, that is a primary access lane, and the width of that is 6 meters of asphalt, which is city standard for the time of day or the period of time that this neighborhood developed in.
Sir, can I get you your name and address for the...
Oh, sorry. Marcos Cacheter. I live at 621 Chapman Avenue.
Thank you.
So conveniently, that laneway is 6 meters wide, the same proposed width of our pathway. And not to mention, let's say a fire truck can get in there, how will that pathway withstand the 25-ton fire truck?
The intent of the pathway is for emergency access purposes only. They would have Nicola Avenue, as the fire chief responded, as their primary access route. They have Chapman Avenue as the primary access route for the 3 lots and the 3 lots that are proposed, the 6 lots proposed. So the pathway forms an avenue for alternative access should the fire emergency personnel seek an alternative area for people to access. So it's only used under emergency access requirements in a situation such that's been described already.
Okay, thank you.
Incidentally, what typical fire that would require more than 1 fire truck, the vast majority of the fire equipment, pickup trucks and various other pieces of equipment that need alternate access, the fire truck has blocked the road already. So, but in the end, it's meant to be a path. So, at least. Sir.
Good evening.
Name and address.
I live at 603 Chapman, across from the proposed development. And as many have alluded to, tonight's been a common theme is the traffic on what I like to call Chapman Highway, which I've renamed it now due to the number of speeders and people cutting through. And it was mentioned that some work was going to be done in this regard earlier, and I just want to know what is being done towards that. I do realize that this meeting has to do with the lane, but it is only going to increase traffic to Chapman, which is already at capacity. Could you touch on what is being done, if anything, to address that problem before someone is killed or injured, which inevitably will happen at some point?
This is the speed on
Chapman Avenue.
Chapman.
People cutting through, 90% of the traffic is people cutting through.
I understand completely. We've actually asked staff for a report, particularly with the implications of SkyTrain construction, because we know that there will be an increase. We suspect there will be an increase in rat running around the construction that would take place on Clarke. So
it has been occurring a lot, way before the construction.
I understand that, but we inherit the road network that we have, and one of the challenges that we have right now is that North Road Chapman, for some people, seems to be faster than waiting in line for the left turn at Clarke. And so we have to try to find a solution for that. And I know all of council, we've talked about it. We've got it before staff right now. One of the challenges was could we almost put a chicane down at Clarke Road at the bottom of the hill? Could we at least narrow it for a crosswalk? Could we put a stop sign there? Could we find other mechanisms along the route? So I'm going to ask. I don't know if the wrong ones are here, but if traffic has any comment about that, Catherine? Ms. Mahork.
Through the chair. On North Road, as part of the sidewalk that's being built up the east side of North Road, or the west side, sorry, of North Road, there will be curb bulges placed at the bottom at the intersection adjacent to the park. So that is one element that's being dealt with on North Road as part of the sidewalk program. On Chapman themselves, there are no right turn signs in place at the intersection of Chapman and Clarke Road. We've had staff out in the area collecting some traffic travel pattern information. We did it for the public meeting. Through that, it was observed that there was illegal right turns being made southbound to westbound off of Clarke onto Chapman, and that information was forwarded to our RCMP traffic control for enforcement purposes. So there is enforcement in place, or that's needed as part of the engineering piece is to post signs and information. So beyond that, those are the two key pieces that are being done in this area. The city does have a traffic calming policy. You're welcome to look at it. It's on the city's website, and it explains our traffic calming policies and practices, and neighborhoods and can initiate the process following the policy.
I've called numerous times and emailed, and actually had a speed trap put up. That was as far as I got, where it reads your speed. I'm not sure what that device is called, but that was put up on Chapman, and it pretty much just allowed the drivers to see how fast they were going and have a good chuckle as they ripped by. So, I mean, I don't think it did much in terms of improving the situation at all. And as I understand it, Coquitlam does not use speed bumps, is that correct? On streets such as Chapman?
We traditionally have not used speed bumps, that's correct.
So the options are limited in that regard then?
Well, we have options, and I do want to meet with the residents, and I suspect that this may be a good opportunity to discuss the possibility of having council members and staff meet on site with some representatives to actually examine it, because to me, this is one thing that we've asked staff to look at. Let's wait till when they come back to us with some suggestions, let's go on site and let's have a look at what the challenges are, because I've stood there for several hours over the course of the last year watching this, or sitting in my car watching this speedway, and we've got work to do to make sure that those kinds of impacts aren't in that neighborhood. Mind you, they're in my neighborhood as well. There are people that run through my neighborhood. We've got to find solutions for that kind of issue. It's been particularly bad as the construction along the Lougheed Highway corridor took place, because so many people felt that Lougheed wasn't a reliable route, so they ended up going up and over the hill and up down Como Lake at 90, 100 kilometers an hour and such. It's a challenge all the way through our community, and I'll commit to trying to find solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen.
I guess we've heard a number of times about the people want the pathway. They want it. I have my issues about the accessibility and leaving it as a pathway as it is. But I guess to the fire chief, when I looked at this, and I've looked up and down Nicola, I mean, we talked about the other, Nicola will be extended through to Bull Court. But is it really necessary for a fire access on this roadway? Because I think that's one of the big worries that people have here. From my look, I don't see it as being necessary. So is it critical, or is it a like?
To the chair, it seems to be there's quite a bit of issue here with public safety. I'm not sure that ever was the intent in my mind of the lane. I think the question I was asked is, would we ever use this? No, we will not, unless we have a confirmed fire in that area where tactically a decision is made to get our fire truck into a location there to fight the fire. I wouldn't count on this lane, and neither would our crews. To remove bollards for us takes precious time. We're not likely to stop and use them. This would be a secondary tactical decision once our crews are already fighting the fire from another angle, and we decided we needed to fight the fire from that particular angle or get a truck in there if it was available. To me, this is not a public safety issue for me having a lane there. If there is access to it, I'll use anything at my means to fight a fire. There's many hindrances we've seen over the years. I'll lay lines through people's yards, right through people's cars if they're in front of the fire hydrant. I will get my lines to where they need to go. If you want to provide some additional access there, much appreciated, but it is not going to be a regular route for a fire truck.
Thank you very much. I think that helps, because from my feeling about this is I don't think we need to have this constructed for the emergency access. I think the people have spoken that they want to keep their pathways. They want their pathways connecting their neighborhoods. And so I don't think we need it as a fire access lane. And I think if we take that off the table there and we come back to dealing strictly with the pathway, and as I said before, my issues about accessibility, and we can narrow down the width needed of the pathway, and then we can, I think Councillor Hodge said earlier, we can maybe dedicate the rest of the land as natural space along that corridor and leave it at that. So to me, and I've been looking back and forth, listening to all the conversation, I'm going, well, if it's not critical and we're putting the neighborhood through this type of upheaval, why don't we just back off from making it an emergency? We'll still keep the bollards or some gates because you want to protect how people use that pathway and be responsible on it. But from me, I don't want my rest of my council, but that's to me. I don't know if it's necessary. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on.
Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, the last speaker, I agree with him on traffic. I'll tell you, Mayor, it's a thing that I've mentioned over a period of years, that the fact is we need more traffic police here in the city. The fact is that, going not only down Chapman, I've been there, and yes, there are speeders. There's speeders everywhere. You go down Austin Avenue, Como Lake, you're going 60, which is 10 kilometers over the speed limit, and they're going by you like you're standing still, like it's a freeway. So I've taken the license numbers down and gone to the police station, asked them to issue a ticket, and they issue a ticket for these speeders. And it's very, very simple. I've got quite a few of them. You know, especially these that are going 100 kilometers an hour in a 50-kilometer zone. You know, so it works every darn time. And but we need more traffic policemen, no question about it. We're either what we have is not enough, or we need to get more, or we get them to enforce the traffic speeders a little more often. But however, those are things that I've been talking about over a period of years, and here we are, you know, and everybody's telling us the same thing. Thank you.
Any comments about the app? Okay. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, I'll just, I've been trying to sort of not weigh in on the traffic calming issue, but as it's been raised a couple of times, I will just sort of mention that over 10 years ago, when I did chair the traffic calming committee for the city of Coquitlam, back then Chapman was identified as one of the problem areas of the city. The options for traffic calming are limited, but being a local road, and it is a local road even though sometimes you think it's an arterial road, there are some options, including road narrowing, which somebody had mentioned earlier, and raised crosswalks. And although those are limited because they can only be where a natural crosswalk actually falls, and coincidentally a crosswalk actually falls right at the end of this pathway. Those type of traffic measures are done through local petitions, and in most cases that means that local residents pay for those traffic calming measures, but there may be opportunities to find another way to do that, given that we have some development taking place. I agree with Councillor Asmussen that the more that we hear about this, maybe the less likely it is that we're going to need to have this built to emergency standards. I think that that's a discussion that will take place later after the public hearing. But I'm certainly hearing a lot from the residents about the maintaining of the Pin-Oak Trail or path, and some of the other issues that we have around it. As I said earlier, I'm not hearing a whole lot about the 6 houses in the subdivision, but I'll continue to listen to see what residents have to say. Thank you.
Very few comments about the actual development. Okay, next. Yes, sir.
Councillors, city staff, and my neighbors. My name is Marek Gnatowski. I'm from 622 Chapman. And at this point, I would like to briefly share with you some of my experience related to the history of this whole area, which may have an important impact on this situation which we have today. And first, years ago, all this property on the Chapman and on the Thompson, they were 1 acre property, which about 40-50 years ago started to be subdivided into the 1/3 acre property. And at that time, one piece of land was given to city, and on the back of the Chapman and Thompson, that's where we have today Nicola, a line was created. According to my knowledge, there is a 10 meters wide path all across, joining these two parts of Nicola, which is in possession of city. And that's what was comments of my neighbor, that this path could be used as for joining this street and improve access to this new development property. Looking at this sketch which I have in front of me, I see that on the right and on the left side of property, which is right now for subdivision, there is only this 10 meters wide path left for some line to build up, which may not be sufficient to serve safely this new development. I am not expert here. I would like to ask this to city staff. That's for this reason we may have this needs to widen and build additional wide strip of access to this property, which today is this parkland, this footpath trail. And first my question here is maybe to city staff, how they see this building or connection, this Nicola Avenue, to these two properties on the west side, or four properties on the east side and four properties on the west side, if those properties are not subdivided at the same time. We have only 10 meters wide strip here. Thank you.
Your Worship, if I could, I'll try to address that in part, and maybe Catherine might be able to confirm the right-of-way widths. What the gentleman just explained kind of jives with what I suspected happened in this area. Back in time, these were large acreage parcels. The main roads, being Thompson and Chapman, were simply east-west, probably gravel roads at the time, and there was large parcels. And as they subdivided over time, the city would then secure additional roads as need be, and the gentleman described, I guess, part of the arrangement was, the pre-plan was to extend Nicola, because there's quite some distance between Chapman on the north, Thompson on the south, and there's no north-south connections. They're just all east-west. And so I guess the pre-plan was to insert an additional east-west road through there, and that's Nicola. The width I'm not sure of, and maybe Catherine can comment on that, but I'm sorry it doesn't come through as clearly as it should on the overhead, but what you see there, this is what are called the cadastral legal boundaries of the lots. The fine sort of dotted lines along the roads and through some of the lots shows what the pre-plan layout would be. So, for example, if you look at the lots to the east, that's to the right of the subject property, you'll see sort of through the middle of them there's a dashed line. So what that would suggest in the pre-plan is that those lots could be subdivided, a half facing onto Chapman, the other half on the south facing onto a wide Nicola. And you can see where Nicola Avenue is there now, the hard lines, but to the north of that there's a dashed line that goes along on the north side to illustrate what would be the ultimate width of Nicola, and that's probably something that Catherine can comment on. As you then move to the west, you'll see again that the dashed line is on the south side of those lots, just below the subject property, and that dashed line then on existing properties carries on right through to the end of, well, it's labeled Nicola, but it's Boyle Court. So the pre-plan shows where the road allowances would go in time, along with the lotting for the subdivisions to achieve that.
Just to supplement Mr. McIntyre's comments, the current proposed width of the space is would be considered sufficient to build a half a road, which is common with a subdivision where the north side of the road, as mentioned previously, that would involve 6 meters of asphalt, and then sidewalk, curb and gutter on the north side only. Over time, all of Nicola is considered a narrow street. It's one that was developed in that context over time, and the current width of Nicola is 12.1 meters of right-of-way, where we're building a street that's 8.5 meters curb to curb within that space, plus sidewalks and utilities. So it's what we call a narrow street standard.
Okay. Please step up, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Alek Totovic. I live there for 25 years in Thompson and Nicola Avenue. How much I see there, there is a problem with that crosswalk there from Chapman Avenue to the Thompson Avenue. That crosswalk there, what the people's planning or whoever wants to make a road there for the truck to go through. This is personal because I worked there for so many years. It should be out, period. no traffic, any traffic except the bike and walkway. If the city council can allow it and enhance a little bit better walkway to that sidewalk, I would be appreciated. But no trucks, period. How much I'm concerned, and my neighbors too, I agree very much so. As long as the Nicol Avenue proceed from that point where is the stop now to the new development, crossing through and making sure there is a full street, 20 meters wide for a truck to go through there. Even if in a case if the fire department has to go through, it's a chance to go through. And no exit from the Chapman, such a called till lane, short lane, whatever you call it, 16 or 18 meters for the truck to get in. So I'm against that, and I'm sure a lot of people are against that, and I'm sure the city council is against that. And let's go with the subdivision, let the people go through and save the money for a lot of people, for the city and for everybody else, and go with the subdivision. And I would appreciate it if the city allowed me to make my point that in the future people should be considering more reasonable than just pushing things what is not fair for the public who lives there, like I live for 25 years.
Got it.
Thank you.
Next speaker. Any other speakers? Please.
Good evening. I am the owner of 630 Chapman Avenue, and my name is John Carmichael. I have a daughter who is 8 and a son who is 4, and my sister lives on Thompson Avenue, and my best friend lives on Thompson Avenue, and I have several friends that live on Kemsley Avenue. My family and I use the walkways all the time, so one thing is, with the traffic issue, there's 6 new houses going to go up, but in reality, it's going to be 6. Then I know some of the houses along Nicola aren't developed yet, so there's going to be 7, 8, 9. Then there's going to be 10, 11, 12, 13. It's going to be actually 13 new homes in there, and that's not even including when the other people do it. They're going to come along Chapman Avenue. They're going to turn down that lane that we saw in the other previous picture to hook on to Nicola. That's going to bring all that vehicular traffic right through Chapman again. So again, I just want to address that for the traffic calming issue. My other point is, my son and my daughter have grown up there, and there's a little tiny creek. You can't see it on there, but there's a little tiny creek, and it's natural, and there's like a ditch with reeds and water in it. My children play there. They throw rocks in there. They throw leaves down there. It floats by. They watch it go through. The proposal for to go through with the pavement, I realize in the term for development, it's going to be lost, right? And it actually is a very special memory for me. And my other issue is, because I travel down that path so much to go to my sister's house, my aunt, for my children, is that they're going to be crossing another street. Because that Nicola Street's going to go through. Right now, my children go through without any hesitation. Now there's another street for them to cross. And there's going to be more traffic from all the new homes and more cars. Everyone has 2 or 3 cars plus. And I don't know how to address the issue of that as well, of them crossing another street. They stop at all of these, traffic signs as it is, but is there a way to create a walkway overhead or something along those lines? I think Ben addressed it a little bit. If there is a way to somehow manage that traffic where they don't have to deal with another street, right? Currently, I walk through the path, I go up the sidewalk up Thompson Avenue, and I'm at my sister's house. And now it's just a concern, a safety concern for me that I haven't seen addressed. So, That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
I want to thank everybody for coming and for showing so much passion about your neighborhood. I think if all of our neighborhoods had this much passion, we'd be ecstatic up here. I also appreciate your concern for nature. I've walked those paths, and they're great paths. The one from Chapman to Kemsley is a little narrow, but the one from Chapman to Thompson is fine. I guess what I'm wondering is if we could guarantee you that they would never be used for vehicular traffic. Like, we need to think about the future whenever we make any decisions. We're thinking about today, but we're also thinking about the future and people who might move into your neighborhood once you've moved on. I don't see anybody here in a scooter. I don't see anybody here in a wheelchair. But for those types of people, a paved path is better than the kind of path that's there now. Obviously, the path that's there now works for most, but the ideal situation for people in those kind of scooters and wheelchairs is a paved path. So if we could convince you that it would never be used for vehicles other than wheelchairs, bikes, scooters, would you be okay with like a 2.5 meter path? I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that. I'm just a new counselor here, but it just, if that's the biggest issue here.
He's new here. Actually, I've been wanting to ask about the same question, and it's a horrible format. The format of public hearings was designed hundreds of years ago, and we're stuck with it. It makes everyone uncomfortable up there. We're all trying to figure out what it is that staff are recommending and why, and we're trying to listen to you and come up with something that will balance the needs that staff have identified for the future with the needs that you have, and perhaps even balance the misconceptions that some people came with, or the way this originally started that created mistrust that said, yeah, let's have a lane. Well, a lane clearly isn't going to work, but would an 18-meter, or not 18-meter, it'll never be 18 meters. I hate the metric system.
2.5
I'm 54 years old and I can't do the metric
just
system. So yes, it would be 4 feet on each side of a 12-foot is what they're now talking about. Would 6 feet on each side of an 8-foot work, or would, for that matter, would a linear park with vegetation on both sides of a 6-foot paved? What is it that, how do we get there?
Well, and I can understand why you love it the way it is. I think it's great, right? But it's maybe not great for everybody who isn't here tonight, and then that's kind of all I'm saying. So I'm just wondering.
News good, though. Sir.
My name is Rosanson. I live at 550 Chapman and have been there for about 40 years. I came here with some apprehension, and I'm comforted by the discussion we had, even though it is contrary to the rules you set out, but I appreciate that. I like your idea of handing it over to the parks, which will guarantee, perhaps to some extent, that it doesn't become a thoroughfare. I think that's good. But I think you're getting the message, and the message is basically leave the paths alone. They're there, they're good, you can do improvements. I think to your response, I think the answer has to be the lesson learned, I think, by these people, and that is perhaps consult with the community first before you impose the plan. Because a large part of this is just a misapprehension. You started with a roadway that to us looked like a freeway, and that was the apprehension. And though you scaled it down, there's an element of trust that was lost. I think you scrapped the idea of the fire truck. That's stupid. I mean, it's the only 2 houses on the street that will have a fire truck access. And I think the fire people know enough how to fight fires without having to have a special lane built in. So I'm comforted by the fact that I think you will do right, if for no other reason but not to trip over Mr. Sikora's dead body. Because it's a promise that I'll hold him to.
Actually, we were torn over that one.
I would suggest, again, in answer to Councillor Wilson's Aspenson, that perhaps you consult with the community. We have an organization there that you come and talk to us about how those paths can be effective and solve the problems that you have, and at the same time are maintained for our benefit, for the rustic aspects that we like about it. I think this is at the root of it. I think you have to talk to the people that you're going to affect. You don't affect them and then come and talk to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor, okay, I will allow it that once, no more. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. The one thing to the people that are here tonight, this bylaw will be dealt with right after the public hearing, when the council meeting is ordered. So certainly, I know it's going to be a late night, but probably we should wind up the public hearing. Right now, I think I've heard enough. I've heard enough. But he still has an open mind. Yes. I have an open mind. No two ways about it. I had it open about a month ago when I heard about it.
We still have 2 items on the public hearing, and both of the proponents on those items are hoping you don't wind it up yet. Okay. Does anyone else want to speak on this one? Are there any other speakers to this item? Are there any other speakers to this item?
Well, for the paths?
No, for the rezoning of this site. Yeah, 606 Chapman.
I like to speak my mind a little bit too once in a while. I'm newbie to the neighborhood. My name is Juan Lita. I live at 580 Thompson Avenue. Yep. We just moved into the neighborhood about 3 years ago. And what we love about the neighborhood, what made us attracted to this neighborhood is the niche past that it has. You know, it makes it a unique neighborhood to be with Mother Nature. So we got the big city on one side, and we got beautiful Mother Nature around us. We got creeks, we got coyotes, skunks, you name it, everything else behind it, even bears once in a while. And these paths, people use them. We don't need them paved. We never asked them to have them paved. Did we come to City Council and say, hey, we want our paths paved? We didn't come and ask for that. You guys are imposing it on us. We like the way they are. And I think they should be grandfathered, like they have been for the last 50 years, and left alone. Okay.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers to this item? Does anyone have any input on the houses? Any other speakers to this item? Any other speakers to this item? Last chance. Any other speakers to this item? Seeing none, I declare this item closed. Mr. Clarke.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moving on to item 2. Item 2
already?
Item 2 pertains to 707 Clarke Road. The intent of Bylaw 4440 is to amend City of Coquitlam zoning bylaw in order to rezone the subject property from RT1 two-family residential to RT3 triplex and quadruplex residential. If approved, the application would facilitate the development of one lot with 4 dwelling units and 2 principal buildings.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jonathan Jackson, Development Planner with the City of Coquitlam. The site is located west of Clarke Road and has a second access from the rear off of Harrison Avenue. The site is designated neighborhood attached residential in the city's official community plan. The adjacent zoning to the site is RT1 two-family residential to the north, south, east, and west, and the subject site is also zoned RT1. The site is currently used for a single-family residential dwelling. The proposed applicant, the applicant is requesting the rezoning in conformance with the official community plan to rezone the property to RT3 triplex and quadruplex residential to facilitate the construction of a quadruplex. Staff are recommending all final readings of the rezoning bylaw number 4440. Thank you.
Okay. Got it. Okay, we have one speaker, the applicant, Satendra Mann, with a PowerPoint presentation. Satendra's address is 233 West 28th Street, North Vancouver. I assume that's the architect office.
Hi,
Thank you. I'm Satendra, and my company is Archetype Design, and I'm pleased to present this project to you. Feels a little bit anticlimactic after the last presentation, but in any case, this project, which we're putting forward, came to Council a different iteration about more than a year ago, and at that rezoning public hearing, there was quite a few concerns raised by the neighborhood and council members. And further to that meeting, I was hired to redesign the project. And my clients and I have carefully listened to the comments that came up at that meeting, and we've come up with a proposal which we tried really hard to address all the concerns that were raised. And so this is the project that we're proposing for the site, and it takes the form of two buildings, one orienting to Clarke, so the view, the top view is the view from Clarke, and the other view is from Harrison. So it's 4 units, 2 in the front building and 2 in the rear building, and we've tried to make it look like 2 single-family homes. This is the revised site plan. Basically, we sort of started from scratch to come up with a new proposal, and so there was kind of 4 major concerns. The primary concern was parking, and there was a lot of conversation around the parking. Residents in this area felt that there was very limited street parking, and the cul-de-sac had no parking on it virtually. So they were concerned about this project adding to that situation. So we've done everything we can to provide the most parking on this site, and the required parking for 4 units is 6 stalls, 1 per unit. The last proposal at the last public hearing was for 8 stalls, and that wasn't felt that it was sufficient. So what we've come up with, what we've provided, is 11 stalls. So that's basically about, almost 2 per unit. And as well, the units are have been reduced in floor area, and there's 1 2-bedroom unit, 2 3-bedrooms, and 1 4-bedroom. So kind of less of an occupant load, if you will. At the last public hearing, from what I saw, there was a lot of misunderstanding about how the parking was provided, and it seemed that, people didn't really believe that the parking fit on the site. So I just wanted to go through this site plan with you to show you where the parking is. So that loop, the circle at the top, is Harrison, and that's where the site is accessed from. So there's a driveway that comes in, and it runs between the 2 buildings. Along each side of the driveway, in red with the diagonal lines, those are parking stalls. So you've got 2 on one side, 1 on the other side. Those are surface stalls outside the buildings, and there's also 1 surface stall down near the bottom of the page. And then attached to the buildings, inside the buildings, there's another 7 stalls, 4 to the front building and 3 in the rear. And I'll just show you, maybe we don't have time to go through the plans, but these plans are basically showing all the dimensions and how the parking is working. So again, last time there was some doubt about the parking actually working, and I just wanted to make it clear that all of our parking stalls are the required size, the access driveways are the required widths, and our drawings go through a review process. So these are fully functional parking stalls. There are also, maybe more clear on this one, is there's no tandem stalls. Just to be clear, these are fully functional stalls. And One comment that came up at the last meeting was that potentially garages are used for storage and not really parking. And what we've provided are garages which are common to the 2 units, so it would be kind of hard to use them for your own storage facilities. So you can kind of, I just want to make sure that we all understand the parking is going to be used as parking, and there's lots of parking. So in both buildings, the parking works like that. We've also tried to minimize the look of, because there is so much parking and we don't want it to look like a parking lot or a parking garage. So the units are kind of wrapped around the parking so that there's no visible garages from the streets. They're kind of tucked away. Another issue that had a lot of discussion was that the residents had, the neighbors have always used this site as access to Clarke, and they didn't want to lose this privilege with the new development. And so my clients have agreed to provide a right-of-way along the top edge of the site to provide access to Clarke. So there's a 3-meter right-of-way, and to accommodate this right-of-way, we've reduced the building footprint and reduced the square footage to provide that, and my clients will be, paving and landscaping that area as well. This is images of what exists on the site, and as you can see, this site is clearly ready for redevelopment. And there was some conversation about new development going in and increasing the density and more people on the site. So just to step back a little bit, for this site, it's a large site, about 10,000 square feet, and there's several options for redevelopment of this site. One is, of course, to have a very large single-family home, which doesn't really fit this neighborhood and isn't something my clients would want to do. Or you could do a duplex, or you could subdivide the lot. This would be the likely other proposal. And if you subdivide the lot into 2 lots, you could do 2 single-family homes, each with a legal suite, and the required parking is 3 per stall, so you'd have 6 parking spots. So you'd have 4 families on the site still, and we feel that the approach that we've taken in providing 4 units is much more desirable because the units are smaller, they're affordable, they're also more livable. You're getting people out of basements up, to the light, and we've provided outdoor space, and it fits into the direction that the city wants to develop, so that when people are aging, want to downsize, or young families, they can stay in the neighborhood. So we feel it's a much better direction, and are positive about our approach. And actually, sorry, let me go back a little bit to this site plan. I also just wanted to mention the trees and the landscaping. Some trees have to be removed. There's some improvements that have to be done on the boulevard. There's a right-of-way that my client is giving for road widening as well. And so some trees have to come down. We have maintained a significant tree in the bottom corner of the site, which is a mature maple, and we've developed the site to facilitate the retention of that tree. As well, there's 4 new trees, and there's extensive planting of the site. So there's over 300 plants proposed for this site. So while we don't have huge lawns, we have usable outdoor space for all the units in the way of at-ground patios and large deck spaces. Sorry. Besides just addressing the issues that came up, we also wanted to do, an attractive, high-quality building that's a positive contribution to this neighborhood. And we were inspired by this kind of French colonial style, which is kind of relates to Coquitlam. And so we've come up with our proposal based on that. And we're using very high-quality materials. So the materials that we propose for the body of the building is hardy siding throughout, and the roofing is tile roofing, concrete tile, and you can also see a brick base on all the buildings, which is kind of typical to this kind of building type, and there's metal railings and extensive details of brackets and cornice elements and metal features and shutters and lots of things that we think will make the building very attractive. So we think we've come up with a project that we hope that is something that is a great contribution to this neighborhood. And if you have any questions about this project, I'd be happy to respond.
Thank you very much. You've got a pathway to Clarke. How wide is it, and is it paved?
Oh, God. Well, the right-of-way, I can tell you.
It's okay. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. This, to me, looks like a monster house.
It's not a monster house.
Oh, it looks like it. Believe me, if I drove by it and take a look at it, I'd swear that it's a monster house. But however, you mentioned that you have 8 units that you're building?
No, 4 units.
4 units only?
Yes.
Well, you've got a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and a 4-bedroom.
Here, I'll just go back to the plans. So in the front building, Unit 1 and 2, Unit 1 is 4 bedrooms, Unit 2 is 3 bedrooms, and in the rear building, Unit 3 is 3 bedrooms, Unit 4 is 2 bedrooms. So there's a variety of unit types which we think will accommodate different types of families.
Okay, now with a 4-bedroom one, I know you got, say you have ample parking, 2 point some odd points per unit, 2.76 or something per unit, which is, normally would be okay. But to me, a 4-bedroom unit, tells me there's going to be a lot of cars.
Well, you could, to be fair, Unit 4 is 2 bedrooms, so maybe that one has 2 parking stalls, and the 4-bedroom has an additional one. So
additional one. How many in the 4-bedroom units? Parking 3. Parking.
3 parking. Yeah.
Okay. So. And a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom?
One has 2, one has 3, and then the 2-bedroom has 2.
Yeah, look, you seem to be providing all the parking space that's needed, but you're taking all the green belt away with parking spaces all over the place. So to me, I don't know. I got mixed feelings with this development, and because I can tell you something, we have enough problems with traffic, with parking on the street, which probably will happen in these places, because if you get a family moving in to 4 bedrooms, that could be 4 cars, could be even more than that. So those are the problems that you're going to have. And, I hate to be negative, but however, here's the problems you're having. You're going to, in that area, they have problems about parking anyway, because what happens, that people park their cars and they go to Simon Fraser University. And it's bumper to bumper with cars. So, those are things that I have concern. But however, let's hear from the public if there's any comments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. No, wait right there. I've got questions myself. We've got Councillor O'Neill first, though.
Yeah, thank you. I think you might want to review your speaking notes, because you said 11 stalls, that's almost 2 per unit, which would have indicated there are more units. The report says 2.75 per unit, so you were actually getting all those figures jumbled up at the beginning, and it had me a little confused.
Sorry about that.
So it's almost 3 per unit, right? Okay. So I'm not going to make a speech about this or anything. I just wanted to make sure that you knew and we knew and what the right figure is.
Oh, sorry.
We haven't had a good discussion about parking in a long time, so this is really
Yeah. I think Jonathan had figured it out that it was 2.75 per unit.
That's right, yeah. But you said something different. So.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Asmundson.
And this is going to be a strategy.
Can you turn your microphone on?
Thank you. This is going to be a strata for the common area and everything in this unit. So be.
That's right. The strata units.
Yeah. So that'll keep good maintenance of the area, and the strata unit can also help deal with if there's another unit that requires parking within that strata. They can work that out within themselves.
Definitely.
Yes. So I think that I don't have a problem with that at all. I do thank you though for when the concerns came from this neighborhood. One about the pathway, and one about the parking. And you've come back and you've added 5 more parking spaces. You increased the parking in this area, which is, I think, is an excellent result from what you heard. And I think, once again, dedicating that pathway, because it was just a rough path. It really wasn't a looked-after path. It was just a rough cut-through area. So for the developer and have a paved path coming out, I think, is going to make a lot for the community in there. I think you've done a wonderful job. I like the looks of the buildings. It's unique. I think it's going to create a nice look in the neighborhood. I think the strata will look after any problems from a 4-unit to a 2-unit within parking, so I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wilson, any questions?
I think it's very innovative. Just a couple questions. The parking inside the buildings, you said, is shared. So is it like a carport? Or are there garage doors?
Yeah, it's basically like a common garage.
It's open.
It's not underground, but it's a bit like that.
Okay. And how wide are the spots? You said they conform to standards, but I can't read any widths.
They're 8'6" wide, okay. 19 feet deep.
We were at looking at some places on the weekend, and the road was so narrow and the openings to the garage doors were so small that you couldn't actually physically do it, so everybody was using their garages as sheds. Are you confident that there's enough of a turning radius to get in and out of these fairly adequately with a standard size car?
Yeah, the parking in between, the building cantilever is a little bit over at the top, but the driveway width is, I believe, 24 feet between the garage face to garage face, which is good turning space.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. I was going to ask you the question on the cantilever. On building A, the left side, the south side. Obviously, the first floor is what, 4 feet, I think, or.
It's a very specific questions, but I think so. It's 4 or 5 feet. I don't know if we can see that. There's a dimension there.
Can't see the dimension, but we get the idea. So the dotted line that goes through the living room and the dining room of those 2 units is the line of the garage doors.
Exactly, yes.
And on the question, those are garage doors?
Those are garage doors, and they're very wide. You know, they're the full width of the parking stalls.
So there's 3 double garage doors and 1 single garage door.
On this side, there's two double garage doors.
Yes, and on the other side, there's 1 double and 1 single.
I believe so. That's right. There's 1 single and 2 double garage doors.
1 double and 2 singles.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Okay. And the remaining parking space is just surfaced, just not covered.
Yes, that's right.
To the east of it, yes. And you haven't accounted for any smaller, I mean, it's one of the issues we've got is every car is 19 feet, and I don't know that any council member has a car that needs a 19-foot space. We've all got shorter and well, not all of you, yes, except for Brent. Yes.
Actually, in the RT3 zoning, there's no provision for small car stalls, so we have to provide all of them as full size.
Yes, and I have argued with them over and over again because I see 2 spaces here for the smart car sort of mini that could have tucked into the corner.
Actually, that was the other thing I didn't get to mention was my clients are interested in marketing this as transit-oriented housing, and they've had some conversations with Moto, the car share people. Apparently, they're going to start having cars in Coquitlam too. So we're hoping that will be, something that we participate in here.
The first one's coming. It's not within walking distance of this, but it's coming. Councillor Wilson has another one.
So I just wanted to clarify, when I asked about whether it was open parking or if there was garage doors, I thought you said it was going to be open, but you're saying there are going to be garage doors on there?
Yeah, it's from face of garage door to face of garage door.
Okay.
They're going to, sorry, I thought you meant open between the stalls. Usually we try to separate the parking for each unit, but in this instance we have an open between the stalls, but the garage doors are there on the units, on the garage. And the 24 feet that I mentioned, it's from face of garage door to face of garage door.
Yeah, and so there'll be an opening between the garages for Unit 1 and Unit 2. It'll all be...
That will be a 40 by 20 four-car garage.
There'll be some posts and stuff, but it'll otherwise be open?
Yes, I'm thinking that we don't need the posts. So this is a plan, the basement plan, where it says, and the structure will span from one side to the other, so it'll be free of posts. But yeah, basically it'll be about 40, I don't know what the dimension is.
That's fine. I don't want to second guess you. I've seen things that don't work and got approved, and so
I see. Yeah. Well, we can take a careful look at it again and make sure it does. I'm pretty confident, but we'll look again.
Good. Okay, I see no other questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm curious as all get out to find out how you get around the new seismic.
Okay.
Are there any speakers to this item? Any speakers to this item? Sir. Hope it's not about the path.
Your Worship, Councillors, my name is Neil Matheson. I live at 655 Harrison Avenue. That is directly across the street from this houses that they want to put in. Now, the last time they did it, I had no problem with that. This time, I have no problem with it. The only problem is the city. I've asked them to put a no parking sign in the cul-de-sac so people can turn around. The second you put one car there, people cannot turn around. I've had fire engines that took 10 minutes to turn around in that cul-de-sac. Either that or back up an eighth of a mile down the street. The garbage trucks, I don't park in front of my own house so the garbage trucks can turn around. But it sure as can be, if you put, actually if the cul-de-sac was right there, you see this 14 feet of parking area on that side.
Okay. A bunch of council members are acknowledging that they remember this space that you're talking about. I'm going to turn over to the engineering public works. Do we have any solutions? Or is there a reason why we didn't have any solutions up till now? Can we examine the issue?
Yes, Your Worship, we can examine the issue. Unfortunately, I'm not quite familiar with the City of Coquitlam's bylaws yet, but in most local jurisdictions, in cul-de-sacs, in the cul-de-sac bulb, parking is prohibited even without the signage. And should this be true for Coquitlam, while it can be signed, typically it would be seen as redundant and would set a precedent. But nevertheless, I'll give you my commitment to review it and report back to you.
Thank you very much. He's new here too.
Yeah, there would be little or no cost to the city because there's a sign already on the corner of my lot with a 20-kilometer speed limit down the alley. All they have to do is put a no parking in the cul-de-sac below it. I've asked for that for 2 or 3 years now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other speakers to this item? Any others? Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Ben Craig again, 639 Elmwood Street. I recall this development from a few months ago. One of the big issues was parking and traffic, and I think they've addressed the parking adequately with this parkade you're building in my neighborhood. But with regard to the traffic, the only access to this unit, I think, is from a laneway, like a back lane, with no bollards, I understand, but and the very quiet Harrison Avenue. So my question is it possible to get access off of Clarke as well, just to reduce the traffic around the Harrison area? Thanks.
Okay. Mr. McIntyre, I know the answer, but go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. No, I don't even have to go to engineering to advise the answer to that. Clarke Road is an arterial road. It's very busy, high traffic volumes, unfortunately high speeds as well. For safe traffic movement, you need to have the access points at the intersections, so adding another driveway onto Clarke in this area would be problematic. The property currently is accessed off the sort of the partial cul-de-sac bulb off at the east end of Harrison.
Okay, that was the answer I was going to give. We try to avoid adding connections to arterials. Are there any other speakers to this item? Are there any other speakers to this item? Third and final time, are there any other speakers to this item? Seeing none, I'll declare this item closed. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 3 concerns 1121, 1123, and 1135 Brunette Avenue, 209 and 213 Terrian Street, and 208 Begin Street. The intent of Bylaw 4370 is to authorize the city to enter into heritage revitalization agreement with the owner of those properties, and also authorize the city to designate the land, building, and structure located at 1123 Brunette Avenue, the Red House Amenity Building, as a protected heritage property. The application would facilitate the restoration and heritage designation of the Red House, the historic Maillardville Farm Building, and to incorporate the heritage building into a new multi-family development, which includes 66 apartment units and 14 townhouse units.
Your Worship and members of Council, my name is Michael Dollywall, Development Planner with the City. The site is located within the Maillardville Neighborhood Plan area on the north side of Brunette Avenue between Therian and Begin Street. The site is designated urban townhousing in the city's official community plan. Zoning on the site is RS1, one-family residential, and C1, local commercial. Single-family homes are located north of the site, and 3 to 4 story apartments are located east, west, and south of the site. In addition, Place des Arts is located south of the site. The current use of the site is developed with local commercial and a residential building and a fire-damaged heritage structure. The applicant is requesting to enter into a heritage revitalization agreement to restore the fire-damaged heritage building and develop 66 new apartment units, 14 townhouse units, and create a pedestrian muse and seating area along Brunette Avenue. The proposed form of the development and density are consistent with the adjacent land uses and apartment developments east, west, and south of the subject site. The applicant is providing all the required parking and required long-term and short-term bicycle parking. The Local Government Act permits local governments to enter into a heritage revitalization agreement to preserve property considered to have heritage value. The heritage revitalization agreement is a standalone agreement that can vary or supplement zoning bylaw requirements in place of the rezoning process. At this time, I'd like to pass amended bylaws to council. The original bylaws did not list all 6 properties individually. The revised bylaws list all 6 civic addresses: 1121 Brunette Avenue, 1123 Brunette Avenue, 1135 Brunette Avenue, 209 Therian Street, 213 Therian Street, and 208 Began Street. Staff are recommending second and third readings to Heritage Revitalization Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 4370, 2013, and Heritage Designation Bylaw number 4372, 2013.
And the amended bylaw is before you on blue. Councillor Hodge.
Well, I'm certainly pleased to see the potential for a heritage restoration and certainly ultimately a heritage revitalization agreement placed here. I was sad and well, really upset when the morning when I heard that there had been a fire here, and I was afraid that we had lost one of our heritage buildings. So I'm happy that there's the potential to restore that. I am curious. The building next to it, that's Trev's, is it not? Is that, and was there any heritage value to that building? I'm just curious as to what's to become of that local landmark, and certainly those who worked at the old City Hall will have an attachment to that building. But beyond that, was there values in that building?
To your worship, I think this is on, Don Luxton and Associates haven't done a thorough research on Trev's, but the applicant has agreed to put a heritage plaque commemorating the corner plaza area as Trev's Heritage Plaza area in reference. And the Trev's was not listed on our heritage registry list.
So the proposal would be that would come down, but it would be green space, because under this there's no structure being put in place. It's just that building would come down, and the plaque and possibly some artwork or history or something to accompany it.
To your worship, that is correct. And a pedestrian right-of-way will be placed on the green space along Brunette Avenue, but Brunette Avenue from Begin and Therian. There's a walkway that leads up to the amenity building and then to the corner where Trev's was located.
And the red building itself, what's the potential use for that building?
That building will be an amenity building for the strata.
A meeting place, something that won't be actual residences in there?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The heritage value in Trev's is gone. It was the best milkshake you could get in the 60s and 70s. And that little dog that wandered through the restaurant, it was the only place I've ever known there to be a little resident dog that lived in the restaurant. Yeah. Yes. Not so much heritage, but tradition. It does. Are there any speakers? Oh, wait. Matthew Cheng's here. Okay.
Stand the site plan. It's okay. My name is Matthew Cheng. I'm the architect for this project. We are proposing 2 4-story apartment buildings with 66 units and 2 townhouse buildings with 14 units on this property. We are seeking of FAR of 1.52. We are providing underground parking of 129 in excess of required 111 of parking space for the residents. And visitor, 19 visitor parking in excess of 16 required for the visitors. And for the civil work, the developer will dedicate 3.66 meter along Terrain Avenue and then 3.5 meter along Burnett Avenue. And the developer will provide all off-site work, provide all new sidewalks, provide on-street parking space along Begin and Terrain Street. And also, the developer will purchase a city-owned lane running east-west around in the middle of the property. And also, as said by the planner, the developer will provide a right-of-way, through this, in the middle of the property, the developer will provide a right-of-way, for the as a pedestrian right-of-way, to walk through the site from east to west. And also along Bernard Avenue, a right-of-way will be provided for the public park as we speak. So the site basically is divided into two portions. The northern 2/3 will be used as the residential development, and the southern 1/3 is the big portion, will be used as the community heritage amenity zone. The heritage building, which is the red house, will remain at exactly the same spot and inside the heritage amenity zone, and will function as the amenity building for the strata. The apartment is set away from Bernard Avenue and is set behind the heritage structure, which serves as the backdrop for the heritage structure and create a lot of view to the heritage building, which enhance the prominence of the building. And as we said, that there's one address add to this proposal is the corner lot, and we are proposing a park, semi-public park with right-of-way to the public. And the detail of this, I could pass it to the landscape architect. So for the, sorry, I messed up. The apartment architectural style will be in the character of the French style, with prominent step to the entry, hip roof with dormers, post and beam construction, projection with the material of stucco, wood, stone, and brick, etc. And high quality material will be proposed on the building. The unit facing the street, most of the unit will be designed to face the street, with the ground floor unit will have direct access to the street as much as possible because of the contour of the site. Not everyone could have direct access, but we try our best to have as many as possible. The two four-story apartment will be in character of the existing apartment buildings to the east, west, and south of the site. And there are single-family homes to the north, and we are proposing two townhouse buildings to provide like a transition from the apartment to the single-family homes. This is my submission, and just want to hear anything from landscape architect.
I'm Patricia Campbell, the landscape architect. The site plan that you're looking at is actually just the lower half. There's two halves of this project, and it shows that we are developing the entire streetscape within the Millardvale standard to fit with that. The lower half that you're seeing contains all of the amenity area for the strata. The courtyard on the north part of this project is developed for children's play and seating, and the lower part, you see where there's a diagonal kind of gray space, is developed as a community garden for the strata to use. It also has a patio and the heritage building as part of that amenity. The rest of the space that's seen on this lower drawing is public space. The corner of Big Inn and Brunette is developed as a formal courtyard with a water feature and garden area, as well as a grassed open space for informal play. Then there's also public access from Brunette mid-site and on the east that allows access to that garden lawn area. The wall along Brunette that's currently in place will remain, and we'll put plantings that trail over that. The northern portion of the residential units provides private space for those units on the ground floor, developed in kind of private space patios for those units.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Nicole Howell. I'm with Donald Luxton Associates. We're the heritage consultants on the project. I'm here on behalf of my colleague Christine, who is the consultant on this project. So I'll do my best to answer your questions as best I can if you have anything in regards to the heritage project itself. I'll just say really quickly that this is this house, the Red House, is of enormous historical importance. It's over 100 years old. It's recognized as one of the earlier buildings from the French-Canadian settlement that is Maillardville. It wasn't originally on this site. It was located off-site, built as a mushroom barn, then relocated in 1920 to its current location, which at that point it was rehabilitated into a 4-unit residential building. So it's in that current state right now. It has unfortunately been quite damaged by the fire, but we're confident that there is enough original material there to salvage and reinstate back into the building, which we do intend to restore and rehabilitate to reference that 1920 appearance as closely as we can. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And speaking of restored and rehabilitated, Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. The first speaker mentioned parking on, does you provide parking on Terrian Street and Brunette Avenue? What did you mean by you'll provide? It's City Street?
Mr. Cheng.
The on-street parking is required by the city engineering department. So they will be on the city property, but it is required by the city engineer.
So you will not be providing it to the city?
No, we will not providing, but city will.
Because you said you'll provide on.
We'll provide the space, yeah, because we dedicate 3.6 meter, and those dedicated space will be used as on-street parking.
Okay,
so the parking space, to be clear, the parking spaces are on property that you currently own?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, and so what's your ratio in parking per unit?
The parking bylaw require one parking per 1 bedroom, 1.5 to 2 bedroom, and 1.5 for 3 bedroom. So we fulfill the parking bylaw and in excess.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to this item? Any other speakers to this item? Any council questions at all? No? Any other speakers? Last chance. I'll declare this item and the public hearing closed. We'll take about 5 minutes